Hey, folks. This episode is brought to you by Sunset Lake CBD. You can find them at sunsetlakecbd.com. This year, I really the first? I mean, I had tried CBD in the past, but nothing. I found nothing that was terribly effective. And I have to say that my experience with Sunset Lake CBD has been excellent. I have been using the tincture every night, not every night, but 3 or 4 nights a week, maybe every night this week, to get to sleep. It's been really effective in that. I've had a great experience with the Arnica CBD salve that Sunset Lake CBD sells, and they have all sorts of things, smokables. Matt, will you go through the different types? They have keef, right, in smalls.
Yeah, keef, smalls, and they have regular buds. I recommend the smokables as a sort of additive, particularly the smalls. They are already sort of taken off the stem, and you can just put them right in your grinder next to whatever else you're grinding up, and that's my recommended usage for.
I got to say, I've also enjoyed occasionally. I have smoked a pre-roll, and it's a strange feeling because you don't get the high that you get from pot, but you do get like some relaxation. I enjoy it. And the thing that's great about Sunset Lake CBD is it's not only do they have great business practices like a $15 minimum wage, they have most of the company is employee owned, but they also are 100% pesticide free. They use integrated pest management to deal with pests. They use organic fertilizer. They work with the University of Vermont, which is renowned for their expertise at cultivating hemp. And they use regenerative farming practices. And on top of all that, they are movement allies. They are fans of the show. They wanted to have their coupon code be Left is Best. So you get 20% off with Left is Best. They have the tinctures, they have gummies, CBD gummies. Check it out. All of their products I have found to be excellent, and I am just really happy to have them as sponsors. Check it out. sunsetlakecbd.com. Left is Best gets you 20% off. Let's start the show.
That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, January 8th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ben Dixon from the Benjamin Dixon Show will be joining us on this none too soon Casual Friday. Meanwhile, a Capitol police officer makes the 5th person who died in the Republican putsch from Wednesday. Republican lawmakers, private jet takers, white nationalists, off-duty cops, all being ID'd as part of the riot that took place in the Capitol building. Chris Coons calls on Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley to join the Too Little, Too Late resignation caucus as the rats jump off the sinking ship that is the Trump administration. Meanwhile, Mike Pence balks on the 25th Amendment, pressure builds on Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer for impeachment, while Joe Biden remains reluctant because of a vision of unity. Meanwhile, we have passed 4,000 daily deaths in this country from COVID. A record here, a record around the world. Good news, Pfizer vaccine appears to work against the new mutations that have been found. Speaking of Josh Hawley, he was completely silent on the nature of the mob that attacked Congress, but is vociferous in bemoaning the mob who canceled his book contract. Lastly, serious questions raised on the depth of planning and who knew what when. Congress starts to look into the questions about how yesterday, or I should say Wednesday, came about. All this and more on today's program. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, it's Casual Friday. Joining me as she does on not just the casual days, but the less casual days, Emma Vigeland. Hello, Emma.
Hello. I'm glad it's not a formal day today. It's just a casual one.
It's a casual day. This week has been a little bit more tumultuous, I think, than many of us anticipated on Monday. And, one of the questions is really there were some people who anticipated something that was a little bit more tumultuous. Certainly not the Capitol Police, but it is unclear. There's a lot of different stories floating around there, reported by the Washington Post, by the New York Times, by others, regarding the TikTok, as it were, and who did what in terms of allowing the National Guard to be called out. Why weren't they there beforehand? Have there been some policy changes? How much were the people that Donald Trump installed at the DOD a month or two ago involved in the decision-making process? How much was the DOD concerned about rolling out the National Guard under the command of Donald Trump? And frankly, also the letter that was sent by former defense secretaries. We will talk about this. I mean, I'll be honest. I think we mentioned it, but we didn't pay much attention to it. This was only 5 days ago. You had Ashton Carter, Dick Cheney, William Cohen, Mark Esper, Robert Gates, Chuck Hagel, James Mattis, Leon Panetta, and William Perry and Donald Rumsfeld, all 10 living former defense secretaries, write a letter. We'll talk about that in a bit. But there was a lot of people out there who had concerns about something like this, and you wonder, part of the basis of those concerns could have been just sort of general concerns about Donald Trump and what he's been building over the past couple of years. Some of those concerns could have been specific about things that people heard. So I think we are just at the beginning in terms of trying to figure out what's going on with this stuff. And we will talk more about that with Ben Dixon. And also this week, I mean, it seems like a lifetime ago, but on Tuesday night, the Democrats pulled off a historic win in Georgia. Multiple historic wins.
Right.
And we will talk about that, of course, Ben Dixon from Georgia. But first, let's talk about what's happening over at Fox News, as we like to do. Check in to get a sense of what the heartbeat of the country is, what the pulse of the country is by watching Fox and Friends on a daily basis.
Well, it's certainly the pulse of Trump's mind. He is the Fox News president, and so it's actually a good a barometer for Trump's mentality to look at Fox.
There, I did see a tweet actually suggesting that any newsroom that does not have a reporters on the beat of what's going on in the right-wing media sphere and social media sphere is doing their viewers or their listeners a disservice. And of course, we always like to check in on Fox News. It gives us one level of what's going on in these fever swamps. Here's Ainsley Earhart. Now looking, God bless you, looking.
I muted just in time.
Looking for us to have a little sympathy for folks.
You know, there are 75 million people that voted for President Trump, and they're scared. They're worried about what the future of this country looks like. Many of them...
They're confused.
They are. They're confused. They're heartbroken that their candidate didn't win, and they don't want to be forgotten. And Tucker Carlson really hit home with us last night. Listen.
You know, I wonder, Brendan, could you pull up the clip that shows Ainsley Earhart expressing such sympathy for the people who voted for Hillary Clinton? There were, if I remember correctly, 3 to 4 million more people voted for Clinton than Trump in the last election. Could you pull up that clip? We don't have a clip like that. Of course, it never happened. And to be honest, like, look, I understand, but, you know, I understood in 2016 when people were upset about Donald Trump winning the election. And obviously the guy was under investigation at that time. And I have never come across even those folks who are very concerned about how much time was spent on reporting on that investigation. I've never come across anybody who didn't think that the investigation wasn't warranted. And I've never, even the biggest critics have said, some to me personally, that investigation was warranted. Despite all that, you know, there were people who I think reacted to the election in ways that I thought maybe, you know, at least performatively were a little bit overboard. The idea that anyone would have had any sympathy for people who crashed into the Capitol buildings with zip ties, looking obviously like, when you come in with a handful of zip ties, specifically cuff ties, you're obviously going in there to hold hostages.
100%.
And the idea that there would have been anybody in the media, in any corner of any media at any time, expressing sympathy in the wake of this for people's, you know, inability to handle the election results, so that it drove them to cause a riot that killed the deaths of 5 people.
I mean, we saw the expression of sadness and rage from the majority of people that voted for Hillary Clinton through the women's marches throughout the country. I mean, they were record-breaking marches, and they were incredibly impactful and cathartic for a lot of people. No violence there, no breaking into government buildings and smearing feces on the wall. It's currently being reported that was done. All of the horrific things, the defacing of the Capitol building, and the sitting in Pelosi's seat. I mean, can you imagine if anyone on the left did something equivalent? The reality is that the ideologies are so differing that would never happen. But the sympathy that's being showed to them, like Ben Shapiro was drinking a cup that said liberal tears. I mean, there are compilation videos of people who supported Hillary Clinton on the internet that get tens of millions of views because they're crying and they're upset after Trump's win. They relished in the fact that Hillary Clinton supporters were upset because their candidate won. And now Ainsley Earhart is saying that sympathy should be expressed for the, in some cases, terrorists, at the very least insurrectionists who broke into the Capitol building yesterday. It's interesting where she reserves her sympathy.
Yes, it certainly is. Meanwhile, Donald Trump apparently got the message that there could be criminal charges emanating from this, and he will not have the protections of being a president 14 days from now. Well, I guess it's now 12 and a half days from now, maybe 12 days to the minute. It's pretty close. And so Donald Trump found it within himself to go out and make a speech that he released via Twitter. And I wonder how many takes it took, because they did that thing that I find really annoying, where they do the head-on shot, then they do the side, like old MTV style shot that they use in interviews to cover up a cut. So one wonders how many times he had to do this, but let's just play a little bit of it because, frankly, let's play it because this is
the day he became president, Sam. The day
Exactly.
he became president.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack
on the United States Capitol. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored. We must get on with the business of America. My campaign vigorously pursued every legal avenue to contest the election results. My only goal was to ensure the integrity of the vote. In so doing, I was fighting to defend American democracy. I continue to strongly believe that we must reform our election laws to verify the identity and eligibility of all voters and to ensure faith and confidence in all future elections. Now Congress has certified the results. A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th.
All right. Well, I just wanted to stay to that. That's clearly there was a problem. But look.
Because he probably goes off on some tangent and they have to cut that. Like, you can't say that. You can't call them beautiful people as they, shatter glass and put their feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk.
Now's not the time to remind people that you think you won. That's what was going on in that moment.
Right.
But I mean, look, this should in no way inhibit the actions of making him pay. He, in addition to not calling out the National Guard, it's unclear what his role was in preventing the National Guard from coming out or from providing extra security the days beforehand. That should be investigated. On top of which, we also know that this guy stood in front of the Capitol and said, "I'm going in there with you."
Yep. He lied. He instead,
of course,
drove back home and probably turned on whatever the 1 p.m. programming on Fox News is and sat down and ate his McDonald's. Like, he didn't actually want to contribute and be a part with the plebeians and go and storm the Capitol, but he incited them to do it.
Yep.
And this is exactly what you're saying, Sam. It's an ability for him, or he's trying to get out of legal repercussions by weaseling his way out of it and trying to backtrack. You can't do what has already been done. I mean, luckily, we have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer saying they're going to hold him to account. I have less faith in the Biden administration, certainly.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We will talk more about that with Ben Dixon in just a moment. In the meantime, one of today's sponsors is BetterHelp, who's given our audience 10% off their first month when they go to betterhelp.com/Majority Report. BetterHelp gives you access to your own fully licensed and accredited therapist via phone, chat, or video. This has been a very difficult closing on a year, particularly, dealing with COVID. There is less and less desire for a lot of people to go out and I don't even know if there are therapists. I imagine some places around the country there are therapists seeing people in person, but I tend to doubt it. A lot of therapists these days have long wait lists. It can take weeks or months before they can see you. But when you sign up with BetterHelp, they match you with a therapist based on your specific needs, and you'll be communicating with them in less than 24 hours. Like I say, COVID is a time where I think a lot of people are in desperate need of counseling and therapy for myriad reasons. But this makes it really easy. And if you've never done therapy before, this is a great way to start. Once BetterHelp connects you with a therapist, if you don't think it's a good fit, you can switch to a new one at any time. You can do it for any reason. They charge you nothing else. They have thousands of licensed therapists from all over the country. They have therapists with specialties that may not be in your area. Much easier. They have a network across the country, so it's very easy for them to hook you up with a therapist who has particular specialties. They also tend to be more affordable than therapists that you'd find through traditional means. You don't have to have insurance to use BetterHelp, and they have financial aid options for those who qualify. BetterHelp is giving everyone in our audience 10% off their first month when you go to betterhelp.com/majority report. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/majority report. And speaking of not necessarily being terribly excited about going out into places that may be a little bit crowded these days, we have found a greater reliance on the internet, I think, over the course of this past year.
Even more so than we normally are reliant on it.
Indeed. And one of those things that people have started to use with even far more consistency, stamps.com. Stamps.com allows businesses to do all their mailing and shipping right from their computer, and people, frankly. Right from their computer. It saves small businesses all over the country thousands of hours, tons of money. Frankly, I've used it in the past for small business reasons, particularly when we're sending out a lot of those back in the day. We were sending out swag and stuff like that. But I also use it now just personally, sending packages. I'm finding I'm sending packages to people. I'm not going to visit them for particularly during the holidays, sending gifts, et cetera, et cetera. It is, you save time, you save convenience, and you save money, all with stamps.com. You can use your computer to print official postage 24/7 for any letter, for any package, for any class of mail, anywhere you want to send it. And then what you do, you just schedule a pickup or you drop it off. Super easy. With stamps.com, you get 5 cents off every first class stamp and up to 40% off priority mail and up to 62% off UPS shipping. So it's not just USPS.
62%?
62%.
That's amazing.
I don't know why they go so specific. They could say 60%. People wouldn't be like, oh,
well, because the more specific you are, the more people believe you.
Well, there you go. All right. 62% off UPS shipping rates, up to. So make 2021 the year you stop wasting time, and the year that you realize, like 24/7, I could do this. You don't go to the post office. You go to stamps.com instead. There's no risk. And with my promo code Majority Report, you get a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale. There's no long-term commitments, no contracts. Just go to stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, type in Majority Report, one word, Majority Report. That's stamps.com, promo code Majority Report, stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. All right. Do we have Ben Dixon here? Ladies and gentlemen, always a pleasure on a Friday. I don't know, maybe one day we'll do it in the middle of the week, but generally we reserve Fridays for him.
There he is.
He is the proprietor of the Benjamin Dixon Show, Ben Dixon. Ben?
I'm here. How's it going, Sam?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. How am I? How are you?
Hey, Ben. It's good to see you, too. I mean, I guess it's just good to see Sam, but I guess...
Oh, I'm sorry. I did... yeah, I'm doing good. How are you? You doing good?
All right. Let's say.
Let's move past it.
So, Ben... obviously, the story that is in the forefront of everyone's mind is what took place the other day in Washington, D.C. But let's start with the good news and the news that happened in your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
It seems like a lifetime ago, but it was only like 3 days ago.
It's only 3 days.
Like
I forgot it already.
It's so hard for me to like even just wrap my head around that. It feels like it was. Like I honestly had to double check myself. Like, was it this? It was this week. There was, a hugely historic win. They were both historic wins. Yeah. In fact, there was like 3 different layers of historic wins, right? Like,
right.
The Democrats to take to sweep essentially, the Senate and the presidency in Georgia, the Democrats to sweep a special election in Georgia.
Yeah.
A 35-year-old Jewish guy winning in Georgia.
33. He's the youngest since Joe Biden in 1972.
And Raphael Warnock represents the second time that an African-American has been elected to the Senate in the South since Reconstruction.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
and Sam, we couldn't even get 24 hours to celebrate.
I know it.
And
a
Jewish man, by the way, Ossoff too. I mean, I think that's important. A Jewish man in the South.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that can't be overstated. I mean, it was a good victory. It was a close victory. I think Warnock carried them across the end, but they made it. They both made it. And well, we weren't going to be upstaged, or let me say, the white supremacists in this country weren't going to be upstaged.
So give us a sense of like, just, I mean, when you look at this, what do you think the lessons are? Because I think there's a lot of things that this not only did, I mean, the not only was this sort of, there was a lot of, historical aspects of this, but there's also like, a lot of lessons that are be learned that are very short-term lessons, I think.
Yeah. I think a couple of the short-term lessons, and there are some long-term lessons here. But I have to just say, you get Democrats, trust Black people. We won it for you for Doug Jones. Now, I messed it up later on, but we won it for you for Joe Biden. Then we came back and did it again. Now, we didn't do it by ourselves. Of course, there's plenty of white people who went out there and voted for it. But in terms of disproportionality, Black folks stepped up yet again, including Black Male Voter Project, including New Georgia Project, which is just Stacey Abrams. You got to give Stacey Abrams credit for all the work that she's been doing in Georgia since the election was stolen from her. So it's just the short term, long term is that Black people are almost by definition progressive in every way because we had to survive both white supremacy and capitalism. If there's any people in this country that really are radical and want to change some things, let's just say it's Black people. Now, politically and electorally, this could be modeled across the South for sure. There's a lot of commonalities that go across racial lines in this country. And if we can't just call a thing, what we saw in Washington, D.C. yesterday or 2 days ago, that's white supremacy versus American imperialism. And I think American imperialism stretched its legs a little bit. And now Donald Trump has conceded. I heard, I haven't been tuned in too much.
Well, all right. So what do you think it was that drove the vote this time around, as opposed to, I don't know, 6 years ago or other states? Yeah. I mean, Georgia, the electorate, at least in the Democratic leaning areas, predominantly African-American, like you say, Black people. And, but why this time around as opposed to any other time? Or is it just simply like there's more, the demographic trends or what?
Yeah, because I think people have not stopped fighting for justice in their own different ways. And I think there has been a concerted effort on the ground to out-organize the disenfranchisement that took place through Brian Kemp during the Secretary of State when he was running for governor, disenfranchised hundreds of thousands of people, particularly African Americans, but they got to work right away and they start undoing that damage. So it really honestly has to go to the organizers on the ground, along with the organizations, along with the people who donated to it, because it was a really big effort to overcome that voter suppression.
What was also sort of amazing was that Ossoff and Warnock overperformed Biden. And that was, part of that, I think, was I saw a statistic where the New Georgia campaign had knocked on 400,000 doors in the general election, but they knocked on 2 million doors.
Yeah, I know they knocked on mine at least 18 times. So, but I welcomed it. It was great.
From early November to early January over a 2-month period. And that's stunning, but that doesn't work unless there's already a foundation that's already there. And let me ask you this question too. Are we seeing, I don't think you can get to a certain point without that type of organization, but is there also an element of, and I wonder, this could go back to even Stacey Abrams, when different cohorts of African Americans, and obviously the younger people, I think, have a different set of politics in the Black community than older people. I mean, I think that's across the board in this country. Right. But when Stacey Abrams got so close, did that, and then many people feel that the difference was the disenfranchisement, but did that change the perspective of African-American voters that hey, wait a second, this is not futile. Just because we're in Georgia, just because of the history of this state, does not mean that we can't win, and that getting that close to a win basically inspired people to feel like we can do this, and it's worth me going to cast a ballot.
Well, so a couple of things. I think that is absolutely in the calculus. And the work that was the foundation that was laid even before Stacey Abrams' campaign, that obviously played a factor. But I also think it was, F around and find out, right? They tried it in 2018. I think it's more of they maybe poked the bear, kicked the hornet's nest, and didn't realize that, oh no, we are probably a lot more radical than you all would like for us to be. And if you try to disenfranchise us, then we're going to do our first move by overcoming it using the system. So far, so good. We don't have to talk about steps 2, 3, or 4.
Interesting. And so, all right, give me a sense too of, so that, because, one of the things we heard following the November election and the disappointing showing by Democrats in the House, they maintained the House. I get that. But, I'm sorry, we now have a benchmark as to what could have been achieved, right? Yeah. We have 2 senators elected in a runoff election in Georgia. It's very hard for me to accept that a lot of these Democratic seats that were lost were not within reach if things had been executed in a different manner, right? And one of the reasons that we heard for those losses was defund the police, Medicare for all, too progressive, et cetera, et cetera.
That's important. Yeah.
Give me a sense on what Warnock and Ossoff ran on, A, and B, how they were characterized, right? Because, I mean, look, I understand that if I'm running for Senate in Georgia, I may not be out there, saying Medicare for all necessarily. Right. I may not be out there taking the most left positions of relative to somebody, running for Congress in North Brooklyn. But how do I deal with the criticism? Because none of those candidates who lost in the Democrats across the country in November were running on those things either. They were complaining that it was being weaponized against them. Was that stuff supposedly being weaponized against Ossoff and Warnock?
Well, of course, but they weaponized, laissez-faire capitalism against them. Like, these guys are capitalists. They're not part of my clique. Well, Raphael Warnock might be, because he's radical from the Black radical tradition, and that's a good thing. Right? They try to make it a bad thing, but they forgot how Black Georgia is. Like, he's part of the radical tradition. So yeah, goddamn America. Right. But that said, he isn't out there stumping for defunding the police. He's having to wrap himself in the nicest veneer of what's acceptable Blackness to white America. And he talks about his puppy on air when he really wants to talk about the injustices on the air. So yeah, he had to go underneath the cover of acceptability politics. I don't know about Ossoff. I met him. Cool guy. We'll see.
Well, but I'm saying, did with Loeffler and Perdue, you're there in the media market, how much were they being attacked as being radicals and defund the police and this and that? And the point being that, it obviously didn't work, but how much did they do it?
Oh, no, nonstop. It was so bad. Great question. I got it the second time. Sorry about that. It was so bad. My son, who does nothing but watch YouTube, came and asked me, is Raphael Warnock a radical? And I said, yes, he is. And it's a good thing. So I think that's what they ran up against this time. They're not scaring us with this radical talk. We want them to be radical. John, also, we want you to be radical, my friend.
All right. So I guess the lesson that I think it's, clear from that is that this is not these positions that are being taken by other people around the country, or maybe in certain instances, the candidates themselves are not the liability that they have been sold to us that they are.
At all. But it gives a comfortable cover for centrist Democrats who don't want to run on those issues. Truth is, America's far more radical than they want to admit, the Democrats even want to admit. And so when they are trying to scare us, I'm sure they poured hundreds of millions of dollars into trying to scare everyone into thinking that Ossoff was a radical and that Warnock was a radical. They spent that money and it didn't work. So there's no excuse for centrists to try to hide behind that.
And I think, would you say the primary thrust of the attacks on Loeffler and Perdue had to do with their corruption and their, and we should say this, obviously, like the corruption being a, really, in many respects, just a practice that a lot of sitting senators and congresspeople could be accused of.
Right. And true. Right. It's actually a factual statement that they put their portfolios over the people. And so, yeah, but in terms of the media market, it was nonstop. I think that so it was so saturated that you could not see one Democratic ad without seeing a Republican ad. Just that's the full time between commercial breaks. It was just Loeffler, then Warnock, then Perdue, then Ossoff, then Perdue again. And the truth is that I think they had diminishing returns for sure. I think that you even had diminishing returns with the canvassers, because my door did get knocked on 18 times. And I'm glad to see you guys. Thank you. But at a certain point, money in politics becomes ineffective because you've already saturated all the airwaves, and what you have to do is connect with the people.
So, quick question about the stimulus checks, because we have some breaking news on that. Joe Manchin says he will absolutely not support a second $2,000 stimulus checks, right?
Right. Okay. When is he up? When is the seat up?
Yeah, I mean, he just got reelected. He just got reelected in 2018. So
he got a little bit of time. We have more time. Let's start planning now. He's got to go.
Start planning now. But why did Biden talk to Manchin before he promised this? Like, this is I don't know. That's all I gotta say. Like, if the Democrats do not deliver on this based on Joe Biden's promise, the electoral consequences of this could be disastrous.
I think so. I mean, how much in Georgia, how much do you think that had, how much was that in play?
That was definitely in play. You got to keep in mind, like, Georgians are really hurting from COVID-19, just like everybody else. And so people really did. There were plenty of ads of people who went out because they believed that Ossoff and Warnock were going to be able to deliver. In matter of fact, those were some of the commercials that Joe Biden talked about. So Joe Manchin, you're an impediment to all of America getting what they need. Okay, we'll see you in a couple of years.
It's just stunning. And it is stunning that there is not, I mean, this is, we have to see how this plays out, but this is one of those situations where it's like, this is where you need Chuck Schumer as a leader to basically say, like, look, if you're not on board with this,
Well, look, I mean, maybe they can get Hawley. Like, I don't know how this works with reconciliation. I don't know if this kills it immediately. But you can get Hawley potentially. You could get some other Republicans who want to run in 2024. But, I mean, it seems to me, just to bring it back to Georgia, Ben, as you said, this was so key to the messaging there. And it's so key to, one, the economic recovery as a whole, not just thinking strategically, but two, how Democrats are going to market themselves. What was so awesome about Democrats' message in Georgia was that it was quite clear. Yeah. $2,000 checks, we're in support of it. They're corrupt. They're rich. They don't care about you. It was crystal clear. It was simple, and it was a blueprint for, in terms of messaging, how Democrats should be running more often. And now this... Joe Manchin could sabotage that. The one time they get their blank together.
Look who wins in this, right? So Joe Manchin, like, there is a concerted effort to keep the people disenfranchised, keep them without getting a recovery check, just to exploit labor and people and the essential workers and the working class, period. And the thing is my first reaction was, great, Joe Manchin, you all are getting ready to validate the Jimmy Dores of the world. Because if you guys do this, you're not going to be able to stop the fury of the American people. I'm sorry. You already saw Republicans will use that. Trust me when I tell you, they're coming back to the Capitol. Leftists aren't even going to have to do it. They're waiting for an opportunity. So Joe Manchin is now contributing to the derangement that pushed those they probably aren't even working class, push those white supremacists to the Capitol. Yeah. They have now a justification, along with some of the people on the left that are just waiting for that red-brown coalition.
It's interesting because, it hadn't occurred to me about Hawley. Let's put Hawley in a very tight position, because now Joe Manchin, he's one of these guys who it would not be shocking for him to jump parties. because certainly you do not pay a price by being a Republican. I mean, I think the governor of West Virginia had done that, prior to him. So you don't pay certainly don't pay a price jumping to the Republican Party,
and it might pay him significantly.
They may very well have like a couple of committee seats, and on top of which, then the question becomes like, I mean, one would hope right now that Chuck Schumer. I mean, this is, I mean, and let's move into sort of the question of impeachment and what happened this week. The idea that Joe Biden still is holding on to this notion of unity and that this can all be fixed up when he had 11 senators, Republican senators who were voting to overturn the election, whether because they believed it was fraudulent or not. It's beyond the pale. Chris Coons was calling for the two of these guys to resign. Now, I don't know what Joe Biden thinks he is going to happen here.
Right.
But you use impeachment. If I'm Chuck Schumer, you use impeachment if I'm Nancy Pelosi. And people, I've heard some criticism like, wait, isn't this performative in some way? You use this because impeachment becomes, in the wake of what we just saw, a massive wedge. It was a wedge the first time because people were very hard to distance yourself from Donald Trump when you voted for him in favor against his impeachment the first time you're a Republican. And at this time, it becomes an even more dramatic wedge. You have Ben Sass out there saying that he would consider impeachment. If you have 2 or 3 Republicans or 4 Republicans or 5 Republicans, on and on, who are going to vote for impeachment, you're going to fracture that party. And by fracturing that party, what you can also do is you can go to someone like Lisa Murkowski and say, hey, maybe you might do better caucusing with the Democrats. You could go to Susan Collins, maybe, and say you might do better caucusing with the Democrats. I mean, there's an opportunity here. You need to make things happen. Allowing the Republicans to take the initiative on these things is, again, just a failed political policy.
No, I couldn't say it better. I mean, if you really think about it, it boils down to the fact that the Democrats either intentionally or unintentionally don't handle turncoats well. They just don't put the pressure on. I mean, Republicans know how to whip their House members and senators into shape. And Chuck Schumer, really, this is really time for him to put up or shut up as a leader himself.
I just got an IM from somebody, Attorney Andrew, who IMs us occasionally, saying, not a joke. In response to Manchin stopping $2,000 stimulus checks, Bernie should attach an annual $50,000 UBI to displaced coal workers as a carrot in the COVID relief bill.
There you go.
Giving every coal worker $50,000 would only cost $2 billion a year. I mean, I don't know if you need 50,000, but I mean, you start to play this game where if Joe Manchin's going to vote against $2,000, he's going to vote against direct relief for West Virginia. Now, I mean, maybe that's what's going on here. Maybe, but this is something we anticipated. I mean, we've been calling him President Joe Manchin, since for a couple of days now, because this puts him right in that fulcrum where he desperately wants to be.
Yeah.
And I am very fine with helping out coal workers. I mean, I think we should be doing that anyway in the context of Green New Deal. If we do a piecemeal, we do that first. I'm okay with that too. But the Democrats need to get aggressive here.
Yeah.
Waiting for unity and waiting for the fever to break has been a failed strategy for now 12 years.
I was going to say 40 years, but yeah, definitely in the last 12 years. That's the MO of the Democratic Party. Thing is that once you put it in that context, I have to kind of reanalyze it. Like, he wants this attention. Joe, you're right. President Joe Manchin. Yeah. He's going to love the drama. He's going to love the attention. And I'm telling you, you're absolutely right. If the Democrats don't play hardball, they are going to, however, still give ammunition to another resurgence of what we saw, because a reaction, please don't give white supremacists the additional bonus of you actually stopping this $2,000 check. It just is not going to end well. You see how wild they are already. And then they're going to be out of power. They're going to be Republicans, Make America Great Again, are going to be looking for a rallying cry. And if Donald Trump tried to give them $2,000 before he left office and Joe Manchin stops it and the Democrats don't do their part, Republicans are going to come right back. Make America great again. Trumpists are going to be right back into Washington, D.C.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a problem that we see on a consistent basis. I mean, what is your I mean, I don't know. At this point, I'm watching like the Josh Hawleys and the Ted Cruzes of the world. Hawley is now complaining that he got his book contract canceled from Simon and Schuster. Give me a sense of like where you think this goes in terms of, one of the organizers of this rally was a former Tea Party organizer. And I think we're going to find that there is a lot more sort of like financial support for this stuff, that brought this about. There's obviously like a Q contingency here. Yeah. And Donald Trump, according to the Washington Post, was a little put off by how ragtag and how, he didn't like the costumes of some of the people.
They didn't look like the cast of Mad Men. I'm so sorry. That's the coalition that you put together.
Well, the funny part is like you had guys, you had that big Q guy who wears the horned helmet.
Q
and people,
shaman.
Yeah, the Q shaman. You also, you also have people who came in on private jets, literally, to do this. You had
a representative of the struggling working class.
Yeah. There's already been at least 6 Republican state lawmakers who have been identified as being as part of within the Capitol building itself, including folks from Tennessee and the, apparently
Alabama Attorney General too, right?
The Alabama Attorney General was part of like the organizing of these, the so-called rally. There's reports that the FBI is headed to the Tennessee state legislature, perhaps because they're identifying these people. I mean, but what form does it take next, right? Because to my mind, I see a lineage between like moral majority, the Tea Partiers. I mean, I may be missing out on a step in between there, and basically the Trumpistas.
Yeah, we are looking at. There's only one step next, right? The actual senators and House members of the Republican Party initiating an actual coup against Joe Biden. Is that alarmist? Yeah, they said I was alarmist when I said Donald Trump wasn't going to go quietly. And I'm pretty sure Tuesday looks like that was unquiet. Now, it could have got a lot worse, right? But it was, you have to understand, it was it was the good old boys versus the good old boys. Just which good old boys are you? Are you an American imperialist? Are you a white supremacist? Or are you both? And that's why you had some of the people defending the Capitol taking selfies with the white supremacists in the crowd. They're all the same family, folks.
I mean, I have some sympathy for the selfie thing, to be honest with you. I mean, it seems like the Capitol Police were completely overrun. And from what I've heard from people who were in the building, that they were terrified. And not just the people in the building were terrified. The police were terrified. I mean, they
didn't look terrified in the selfie video, though. I mean,
when they opened the gates to let them in, I mean,
there was some pushback. I get what you're saying, and I understand that many of the Capitol Police were probably terrified, but I think it's not unfair to critique the fact that they were not prepared because of latent racist views that they may not be aware of. Right. But overall,
did you all see the picture of them ready for Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
It looked like something straight out of a movie. Black Lives Matter when it got
so brazen. They're like talking about on the NFL football show I listened to in the morning. They're like, I saw that Black Lives Matter protest and how prepared they were for that. And like that dichotomy and that hypocrisy is resonating with people because it's so obvious. Clear. I think
I just want everyone to picture in your mind, had it been a black person, black man with his legs up on Speaker Pelosi's seat, they would have had that man drawn and quartered by now.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, I guess I'm talking about the, the specific officers. There's no doubt the leadership had a different perspective on this group of people than others. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if I'm an officer and that there's 1,000+ people who have broken through there, some of whom were potentially armed, some of whom at the very least had zip ties, like they were coming in to take hostages. I mean, there were some people in there who had a plan. And
I said this last time, and thank God they didn't come into contact with Ocasio-Cortez or Ilhan Omar, who they already. I mean,
indeed. I mean, honestly, like, you know, it is it is not hard to imagine. I mean, look, there was I think what happened to that woman who was shot dead is incredibly tragic.
Yep.
But if you look at the situation, and I don't mean by saying but, I'm saying in terms of like the officer who shot her, they are barricaded. They are barricaded behind a door. There are terrified Congress people in there. The police officer on the other side of that door has no idea what kind of weapons or what's involved and what's going on the other side of that door. They have literally put furniture in front of the door. Yeah. They are protecting people who are terrified for their lives.
Yeah.
And
I agree with that. Yeah.
And they start to break through the door. I don't think the cop had any idea, who is it or what they have. It's just, we keep saying, don't come through. I've got my gun drawn. Don't come through that door. Don't come through that door. Bam. And so the fear in that scenario, I think, it's easy to poo-poo it when you're not in that situation. But I have talked to people who are in that building, who have been through similar like terrorist alerts and this and that. And they told me they were never more scared than during that day because of how afraid the police officers were.
Good. Because that's how afraid Black people are of what those people are capable of doing to us. And the only thing I would add, because I agree with you when you put in that context, yeah, I think the military industrial complex was shaking in its boots. But what we're not connecting, or what Joe Biden specifically did not connect in his speech, he tried to make it seem like America was better than this. No, this is America. Right. He didn't connect the dots between the military industrial complex and the white supremacy that came to its doorsteps, because he's not going to do that because he's a part of the system. So anyway, we'll do it out here.
Well, he doesn't want to hold people accountable.
Yeah.
He just said, he's leaking to CNN, or people close to him are saying that he doesn't want impeachment because it won't help unify the country. You know what gets the country to heal, not unify? Beating this.
Yes.
Ending this. You have to beat this ideology. You cannot unify with it. You can't come to the center with fascism. You can't come to the center with white supremacy. You can't come to the center with conspiracy theorizing and complete cult of personality, unhinged madness. You beat it, and then you move forward. And he's so unfit for this moment in this specific area. He does not understand.
If you guys don't mind, I actually would love your opinion on something from this regard, because I really do see it as white supremacy versus the military industrial complex. The military industrial complex was afraid and they barked, and Donald Trump got in line. I wonder to what extent the white supremacists who were on those footsteps of the Capitol, I wonder to what extent do they realize that the military industrial complex is a problem? And that is something that needs to change. The question is, will they get rid of their racism to change it? Or are they just going to, never mind, I already know the answer to it. I just wanted to pose the question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure that this is a cohort that they wouldn't be standing with those folks. I think it's just that there is, the Trump presidency, to the extent that there's been any dissent on the Republican side, at the very least, has just been, Coke or Pepsi. We're all in the same, industry. It's just we have a slightly different branding that's going on. And this happens in the Republican Party, particularly to a large extent. It's happened over the past couple of decades in particular, because there's been a lot of money sloshing around, right? The Koch brothers can go out and create a voter file that rivals the Republican Party. You can have billionaires come in and create operations that can rival other parts of the party. And, a lot of like what Trump did in 2016 was the vestige of all the money that was poured into the right-wing echo chamber that, it was basically inherited from the Palins and from, the other sort of like freaks there. Now, the difference is that on the Democratic side and broadly on the left side, we're starting to see the mobilization of money in small donors largely because of like what technology has allowed for, through the internet and we're also starting to see a mobilization coming broadly, I think, from, younger people on the ground, and realizing that there is organizational and money opportunities, whether it's, you see it in Georgia, you see it up in North Brooklyn. It's happening in different places around the country. And that is going to be, in many respects, I don't know if it's going to be the great equalizer, but maybe it's going to make it a little bit of a fight.
Yeah, no, it's particularly the technology aspect of it. That's really only our only hope here, because we're grossly outgunned, literally. I'm not talking about the white supremacists that march up the steps. We're talking about the military industrial complex. So we're hopelessly outgunned, and we're hopelessly outfunded, because we're going up against capitalism, and even if it's indirectly, because they see taxation itself as a threat to their freedom and their liberty. So this is how you connect it. You absolutely right, Sam. It's directly connected back to the Tea Party, and it knows how to take different forms. So as soon as this form that we saw right now is no more acceptable, they're going to go right back and maybe revert to the Tea Party, or they're going to go to another form of this. But they know how to switch forms, and they know how to switch topics, and they switch their arguments, and they're shifty enough to keep doing it over and over and over again. The real question is when will Democrats actually stop it?
Ben Dixon, proprietor of the Benjamin Dixon Show. People can find that on YouTube, right?
Yep, absolutely. And Sam, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me on.
All right. Thanks, Ben, for coming on.
Thanks, Ben.
Hey, thanks, Emma.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on with Joe Manchin, and also discuss what's going on the right-wing crack-up. We'll be right back. Okay, we just got word, according to the Washington Post, I guess it was Jeff Stein, that Joe Manchin says absolutely not, no, on the $2,000 checks. He says the job number one is getting people vaccinated. Cannot in any way imagine how those two things could be in conflict at all.
It's such a false dichotomy. I
would argue that giving people $2,000 below $75,000, I think it is, or $100,000 income, is going to encourage people to stay at home and not go out in certain instances. He says, how is the money that we invest now going to help us best get jobs back and people employed? I can tell you that this is money that is going to go out and get spent. And when money goes out and gets spent, that creates demand, and that maintains, to the extent that if that's your goal, as opposed to getting the pandemic under control, that would also help there. Now, David Dayen has a good point. We're going to talk to David in the next couple of days, is my hope. He says this is actually why you have to make the $2,000 checks a standalone bill. Even without Manchin, there are likely 60 votes for checks. If you bundle with state and local and vaccine money and try to go to reconciliation, hoping checks will force it through, you probably lose all Republicans and don't get Manchin. Yep. So the idea is you pull this up as a separate bill. And again, what you're doing is you are fracturing the Republicans, because if there are 60 votes out there, or even if there are 55, that means 4 or 5 of them, 6 of them, 10 of them are coming from Republicans, and you are fracturing that coalition. Any opportunity you have, again, impeachment is one of those sort of prime things. Any opportunity you have to create a wedge issue with Republicans is key. The whole issue from a political standpoint right now, and frankly, we have a lot of evidence that it dovetails with policy, is win in 2022. And the way you do that is provide for Americans their material needs, which involve getting a response to COVID that is coherent and effective and fast.
Yep.
Salvaging the economy and helping people deal with this situation. And you have to do it from a political perspective. You have to do it.
Right. They put themselves in a bind here. I mean, it shouldn't be a bind for any functioning Democratic Party that's supposedly on the left, right? Or any cohesive caucus. $2,000 stimulus check should be a no-brainer based on their 70+% popularity, based on the fact that the president-elect and de facto leader, God help us, of the Democratic Party said in Georgia and promised that there would be $2,000 stimulus checks. But Joe Manchin, in an exercise of arrogance, of attention-seeking, the best case scenario is that he is using this to leverage things for things he wants, little pet projects, more aid for West Virginia. That's the best case scenario.
Right.
Worst case scenario is that Biden didn't check with Manchin. I tweeted that at the time. I hope he checked with him. Looks like he might have not.
Well, I mean, it's not commensurate. It's like, I don't know that Joe Biden wants to ask permission from Joe Manchin to come out and support $2,000 checks.
Not permission, but like if Democrats fail to deliver after Biden promised this, if this is not possible, that's electoral suicide.
I think there is an opportunity. They're going to have to figure it out. It's really down to Chuck Schumer at this point. Like, and to Nancy Pelosi, are you going to bring this up as a separate bill? Are you going to make Joe Manchin vote against this one benefit, particularly if there are Republicans who are going to come out and support it? And I think that there probably are. Remember, there's a half a dozen Republicans who are up for re-election who are in tight races in 2022, and they are dealing with the fallout, particularly right now. If I'm a Republican senator and I'm running, let's say, in Wisconsin, I'm Ron Johnson. I'm a little bit concerned right now about how close I've been to this administration. If I'm running for re-election and if I'm Marco Rubio, for instance, and I'm a little concerned about how close I've been associated with Donald Trump, particularly after this thing, right? I mean, there's a reason why Marco Rubio has been quiet. And
in fact, he came out yesterday, Marco Rubio, and kind of condemned what happened in terms of the rioting.
He's got to create some distance from himself.
Yeah.
And so voting for $2,000 is a great way to get some forgiveness. If I'm Josh Hawley and I made this stink about $2,000 and I don't vote for it in a standalone bill, I'm going to look pretty bad. And if I'm Ben Sass and I'm thinking, okay, Josh Hawley has wrapped himself with the Donald Trump veneer and he's going to vote for this $2,000, maybe I need to vote for this $2,000. I mean,
yeah.
By bringing it up as a standalone bill and not allowing there to be any other excuse, I can't vote for this because I don't want to do a blue state bailout, or I can't vote for this because I don't want to do X, Y, or Z. Make them make a decision on this specific question. So this is really, again, and people say to me, like, why do you focus on the Democrats? Because the Democrats are for the same reason why I tend to vote for Democrats as opposed to Republicans, because they are the closest vehicles that exist within the context of our electoral government, politics at this moment anyways, who have the ability to execute policies that we support. And so really, this is about pressuring Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and, Joe Biden, but really it's these two who are going to pass the legislation. And Joe Biden wants to veto this, that's not going to happen.
No.
So you pressure Nancy Pelosi, you pressure Chuck Schumer, bring this as a standalone bill, put the pressure on those people to vote against it.
Fracture
Indeed.
your political opponents.
All right, folks, we'll be back on Monday. Remember, we are playing on the Peacock app. If you want to check us out, you missed any part of the show, you want to see it again, you want to see it with better graphics, check us out on the Peacock app. You can find it, the Choice channel. You can just search for my name or the Majority Report on the Peacock app. We will see you on Monday. For those of you sticking around, we will see you now. You still see us.
We're seeing you now. I see you.
Emma, I see you as well.
Yeah.
We will head into, we may have somebody who was like on the ground during this stuff, but we have a lot of ground to cover ourselves. We've got some IMs. We'll take some phone calls, I think. I think we might take phone calls. We'll see.
All right.
But I can tell you this show, it relies on you, Emma. Well, it does sort of rely on you too, Emma.
Well, I guess now.
Not to become a member. I don't rely on you to become a member. I rely on you to show up and do the show.
Yeah. I mean, I think the majority report with Sam Seder relies a lot on Sam Seder as well.
The show relies on me. It relies on Matt and Brendan. But the way that Matt and Brendan and Emma and I are cajoled into coming into work, I'd probably do it. I'd be doing it. Just wouldn't have the fancy backdrop. Is by the support of our members. And you can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show and you get extra content just about every day of the year, the working day, business day, just about. I don't know. There's a couple where, occasionally we don't, but, like 200 times a year, extra content. So become a member, jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, we got merch. Do we have the secret things that go on our heads in the merch shop yet, Brendan? Are they there? I've seen a prototype.
Yeah, we got the prototypes, but we're waiting on full scale production. Super
sweet. Those things. But you, in the meantime, head over to shop.majorityreportradio.com. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie. Have you tried the AM Quickie yet? Not you, Emma. I know you have. I'm talking about
Obviously.
You, the other you.
Hey, everybody, try the AM Quickie.
There you go. Listen to Emma. All right. Don't forget, check out Nomi's show today. The youtube.com/the No McKee show. Not 100% sure who's on today, but you can check that out on YouTube. Also, don't forget the folks at the Antifada. Jamie is on Twitch these days. So you can go to twitch.tv. They're doing at least one or two what do you call it? Streams a week.
Yep.
You can check that out. Yeah. I should say on Nomi's show today, Jane McAlevey. Oh, we've got to have her on. And Francesca Fiorentini. We got to have her back on too.
Yeah, she was she's so funny and quick, and I thought that was a great time.
That was fun.
On.
We got to do that again. I don't know. Yeah. I always forget now. Like these days I've lost my entire
Did you see the Dominion voting system just suing Sidney Powell for $1.3 billion?
Billion?
Billion with a B.
Fantastic.
I know.
That's fantastic.
My favorite
Matt, what's going on?
Icon.
Speaking of billions, what's going on, Matt, with your media empire?
Yeah, last night, the first episode 1 of the fully launched Left Reckoning was last night with guest Malaika Jabali. She talked about, she's got, I think, a really sensible message on the importance of organizing locally. And we also talked about the storming of the Capitol. And in the post-game, the very first post-game, we talked about Bernie setting the right tone, I think in a clip we'll play later on, maybe in the fun half today. And also the conspiracy theory that the right is hewing to about Antifa herding patriots into the Capitol against their sort of best intentions. That's the new line that this was all Antifa's fault. So we talked about that. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get that post game.
All right. See you in the fun half.
In for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back, 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 back. And the alpha males are back, 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 back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back, back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back, 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 back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back, 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 back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back, back, back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Fuck them.
Almost says what?
Almost
says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
The alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black Africans. And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black.
See Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck them, fuck them, fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We're back.
Hello.
We're back. Brendan, did you get that thing that Kyle sent me?
Yes.
Is it good? I can't see it.
I couldn't watch it when I was doing the Fun Half song.
All right, let's pop this up. I mean, it's been a long time, but
so we're doing this cold?
I like cold. I think cold watch segments are good.
Yeah, we're doing this cold, folks. Kyle sent this to me, but I am blocked by this individual, despite the fact that he has done so much for me in my career. He does not allow me to see any more of his tweets. This has been the case for a couple of years. Many of you might remember a guy named Mike Cernovich. And he has been rather quiet since he failed in his endeavor to get me fired from MSNBC. Well, he was successful, and then it just didn't stick.
Now you've expanded your empire. Now we're on Peacock.
That's right. It actually, yes.
It backfired.
Yes. I mean, maybe he'll try and get me fired from Peacock, and then maybe what will happen is I will own a share of NBC Universal.
Yep. Then we'll be on primetime at 8 p.m.
I mean, if we could just repeat this show, I would be okay with that. But I'm not doing that. But right. Not on a regular basis. I'm perfectly happy having them
they'll
replay
be
the show.
They'll love the content so much that
they'll do it 3 times. Put it across
one show will be on at 8. Yeah.
Put it right on NBC 8 p.m. Right. I don't care. But here is Mike Cernovich. Let's check in what's going on. I mean, he must be full on. Like, where do you think he is these days? I mean, mentally.
We don't know.
Let's see. Here we go.
I'm between the world of, like, I love you people. You're fucked up in your own ways. We all are. And I love you people. And I want you to know you're loved. And I want you to know that I love you. And I want you to know that your families love you. And I want you to know that people love you. and you made fools of yourself, telling them that Trump was going to be in office. And it's hard to convey that message to people with love. Because I feel the love, I express the love, but people take that because we live in a very snowflake society. People don't tell me I did this. Did I once say that Trump was going to be in president January 20th? Did I? Fact check me in real time. I wasn't paying
attention to him.
What did I say?
Does anybody?
What have I said consistently for 2 months?
What's he doing?
True or false? Did I ever one time say that Trump was going to be in office after January 20th?
Special brain power stuff?
Have I or haven't I? It's just objectively.
Somebody said, I got a lot of trust the plan, Jane.
Biden. And that's just the way it is. So, like, I love you guys, and I want you to go home. You're in a fucking cult. Ooh. You're in a fucking cult. That was a concession speech. There was no grand plan. It was all a lie. It was all a ruse. You got played, and that's okay. Everybody in life gets played, man. Everybody in life believes bullshit.
Pause it for 1 second. I want to reiterate something. Not only is it the case that, yes, everybody in life gets played, but his entire online career has been based on that dynamic.
Yeah. Like, he knows better than anybody because he plays people.
You guys got played. Let's just listen to a little more. This is really sad stuff.
We lied to you, but you're loved.
Guys, he's coming from a place of
weird
love.
Shit all the time. Right?
Snowflakes.
Just being human. So just say, fuck, man, I got played. That sucks. But you have people who love you. Go back to the people who love you. Fuck. And, that's where the frustration comes in. Is that people say I'm losing my hair. Are you kidding me? Look at this. Losing my hair? How dare you? How dare you? I just got a fresh cut.
Maybe a little bit of a narcissistic.
Don't even try to hate him on Warrior Month.
I'm in the middle of trying to let everybody down. Okay, that's good. I think we've seen enough.
Right.
There it is. There it is. Mike Cernovich telling everybody.
Hippie Mike Cernovich.
You've been duped. Cernovich is telling everybody you've been duped. Believe me, I am the one. I'll finally tell you the truth. Hey, I got news for you, folks. You were duped a lot longer before today. And he's just coming out now because it's just, I don't know, whatever his marketing plan has said, whatever his funnel marketing strategy has been. That's basically it, I guess.
Well, I mean, he's in such a crowded space of pro-Trump grifters. He has to differentiate himself in some way. I mean, you can't take what Mike Cernovich says in his honest turn there or attempt to embrace love. Again, that's why is he on drugs? I don't really know. But as he calls our society snowflakes, you can't take it at face value. There's got to be some sort of underlying thing.
He's got something.
Gorilla mindset pills, I think.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's, speaking of right-wing crack-ups, let's look at this. This is a Frank Luntz Trump 2020 focus group. And this is going to be sort of fun because there is a lot of people there were people who were very, very upset about Hillary Clinton losing. I think we were all very surprised and shocked without a doubt. And I was upset that she lost more so that Donald Trump won. But this is going to be more dramatic because there's a lot of people who believe that this was all from, the past couple of years, a secret plan. There was a secret plan that it was going to look like he was going to lose, but this was the way he was going to roll up all of the pedophiles and all of the corruption and drain the swamp. And then it turns out, he just lost.
Do you realize that people showed up at the Capitol yesterday thinking that the election could be overturned? They were misled. That never could have happened. But they showed up angry for the wrong reason. Do you realize that? No election could have been overturned. So somebody should have barnstormed the Capitol and put Mike Pence in a headlock to force him to do something constitutionally he did not have the right to do. Yesterday was tragic, stupid, and pathetic. And everybody was misled. And I think we're smarter than that. And we need to face reality, and Trump should concede, and it's over.
I think we're fighting for transparency. We're fighting for transparency.
There is transparency. Trump lost the election. What else do we need to prove?
That's a lie.
The election was stolen. There is no transparency.
Can you prove it? Can you prove it in a court?
How can you if they don't let you in to look?
Look at the
What do you mean they don't let you in to look? We had bad lawyering. Go through the cases. I've read every case.
Yeah, he's a fool. I admit it. He's vacuous, okay? But
nothing to do with him being vacuous.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yes, they are. You prove fraud in a court. Rudy Giuliani was. Hold on, let me finish. Rudy Giuliani was asked twice by 2 federal judges, "Counselor, are you alleging, claiming fraud for your client?" He said no. Every other word out of Rudy's mouth and Trump's mouth: fraud, fraud, fraud. You get redress for fraud in a court of law. You can't tell me there was fraud. You can't put a video on Facebook or Twitter talking about this fraud. I can't fix it. I can't fix it. I'm blind. How am I blind?
Did you not see the video in Georgia?
Why do you believe every video you see? What's the?
So the videos, doctor.
How do you get more return ballots that are actually voters?
How come we couldn't prove it in a court? We could not prove it in a court.
You got
60 cases, 0 for 60, guys. 0 for 60.
Don't check the signatures. Don't check the signatures. Oh, hell no.
Believe Lynn Wood and believe Sidney Powell. Put the tinfoil hat on. Believe them.
Book of the lot.
Yeah, you're out of your mind.
Sidney Powell, great lawyer, right? Lynn Wood, great lawyer, right? Pedo, John Roberts, whatever. Keep believing that stuff. Drink the Kool-Aid.
It's all Facebook. It is all Facebook. That's
gotta
my
say,
one thought.
I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, like, I would spend my kids' college education savings that I'm working on to have a regular subscription where I could just have that playing every day in the background in my house. Like that level of just, I mean, I would have liked to see where that guy with the headset was a year or 2 ago or 3 years ago. Like what was it that they were believing was going to happen? And now, like, you know, flash forward to where he realizes, like, this has all been just a total joke, everybody. And these guys are just, you know, you see a couple of them going like this, and then you see like half of the other people just in a complete like daze, like, what's happening?
And then him saying you were misled, and then them being like, you're crazy.
You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
Jeez.
Like, because this is what happens with the false authority that people place on things like Facebook videos and things they see on the internet that gets them to fortify their preconceived notions. Like they think that they're the ones that have the true knowledge, right? Yep. They've put everything together. They've mapped it all together. And like, I guess I used to downplay and poo-poo the effects of misinformation on social media. Like I just thought it was like, okay, well, leftists have to make their case. The Democratic Party has to make their case. That's the greater issue here. But you see things like that, and I think I was wrong to downplay. I mean, it can be both, but like I almost underestimated the problem.
Yeah. One counterpoint is I've seen stats, and I'll have to bring this up for a later episode because I can't find it right now, but the actual amount of time people spend on social media is small. And actually, a lot of these major claims are filtered from the major networks themselves, particularly Fox News, but then you have OAN. I think those are really, I think, probably still the biggest problem. And like right-wing radio, right? Like I think...
You mean as opposed to social media?
I think we could overemphasize social media and forget about that infrastructure a bit too much, and in a way that might not be helpful given like censorship stuff.
I think it is. I think it is. Yes. I think saying specifically, although I will say this, and I'm speaking from just, personal experience, like in terms of like the vaccination, like the misinformation about vaccinations. There, and I would imagine some of that comes from right-wing radio, and it comes from all different sources, right? I mean, you even had Jimmy Dore attacking Fauci, as a liar and, fabricator. And once you establish that, then like him coming out and saying, here's the deal with the Moderna vaccine, that all becomes suspect, right? But I mean, healthcare workers who are saying like, I get this information from Facebook. I went on Facebook and people told me that it doesn't keep you from infecting other people and that it's poison and it's going to mutate your DNA. And it's very hard to disaggregate. Right. And I think like in some ways, three responses on Facebook or two responses on Facebook could be worth hours of what you get on WorldNet Daily. You know what I mean? Or, one person, I have a feeling it's a lot more complicated than we think it is.
Because I think there's peer pressure stuff on social media.
And also it fills in the gaps of what Sam is talking about, right? Like you may be consuming OAN or OWN or whatever it's called, and you might be watching that stuff, or you might be watching Fox and they're like, well, there's fraud. There might be fraud. And then you go on Facebook and you see, oh, wow, they're taking the bag of Georgia ballots and they're putting it in a different room. That proves everything I'm hearing. And then you think you're the most informed person in the world. Because also all those standard media outlets have been discredited. Like the top outlets like whatever, New York Times, Washington Post, which we have quibbles with, but in terms of just disseminating facts, there's a place for them in society and an important place.
Milton Apathy IMs and says, Matt is wrong on this. Facebook is the problem. I mean, there is a lot, particularly with this cohort. There's a lot of evidence that Facebook, because I think hearing it from someone who is ostensibly your friend has more validity in this era than it does necessarily from the news. So I think it's quite possible you have like these sort of mavens, right, that exist on Facebook who then disseminate this and start these things. Like I just remember like it used to be faxes, like they used to send faxes, and then there's like emails. And if like you have like, I have older relatives who just sent this stuff around. Used to be, emails, and they would just like, this is where they would get this incredible disinformation. And then you could just immediately,
I still get them.
You could take any line from that email and then just search it, and it would immediately take you to Snopes, and you could easily, and then I would get back on the email. I would send out, this is not true. And then I would get removed from the email list. But on Facebook, it's a little bit different because it's actually like people regurgitating stuff that they've heard other places and spreading it. And there's evidence, according to Milton Apathy, that it suppressed the black vote in 2016, and that's quite possible. I mean, obviously, you need there's a bunch of different elements to it, right? But it's very, I don't know. It's hard to disaggregate.
I have like a relative, not immediate relative, but who used to be like, she's older, she's in her 70s, 60s, used to be like a hippie, used to like Bernie, and got so radicalized with Q and stuff on Facebook. I get tens of emails from her a month that just say Fauci and Biden together, a scientific dictatorship, like Fauci's treacherous ties to China and globalists, finally the truth. These, I'm just looking at it right now, anti-vaccine stuff, COVID variants not protected by vaccine. I'm blocked from Facebook in all caps, which means it's probably information you should have. Send some bizarre link. Like that's an example of it.
Yep. Let's play this clip from Rush Limbaugh, just to give you a sense of what's going on here. Now, this guy's, slowly exiting a stage. I guess it's actually sort of a trapdoor in the stage, right? He'll go down when he exits the stage. But nevertheless, here is Rush Limbaugh, and you got to do some thinking about what he's trying to argue here, because on its face, it's just he's trying to make these people heroic. But really, you got to really contemplate. Let's listen to this clip.
Right to protest. We're supposed to be horrified by the protesters. Meanwhile, 4 years of a coup launched in the Oval Office of Barack Obama to overturn the election results of 2016, and not a single word of concern about the potential damage to our Constitution. No, they were just utter denials. We didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. Trump's got to go. Trump's poison. So a lot of irony out there, and there's a lot of people calling for the end of violence. There's a lot of conservatives, social media, who say that any violence or aggression at all is unacceptable, regardless of the circumstances. I'm glad Sam Adams, Thomas Paine, the actual Tea Party guys, the men at Lexington and Concord didn't feel that way.
They used to get away.
There you go. So Limbaugh is basically saying that these people are functioning in the same way as Thomas Paine and Sam Adams. And I don't think 5 people died, actually, in the Tea Party. But I can't recall the specifics. I'm quite sure this was a protest. But nevertheless, he seems to be calling for a revolution. I mean, really, what is he saying here? It's not just that these people are like the founding fathers, because it doesn't end there, right? It is Rush Limbaugh is going out and basically saying that, I mean, in many respects, like, we need to reestablish the country. And if you look at the people who are walking up there, if you have any doubt how sort of like racially tinged this is, this is what you're looking at. Is that we need to reestablish the country. In what way? What way is it? Like Donald Trump is president forever, or is it really just we need to reestablish our dominance?
Yeah, I mean that's what all of this is so interconnected with. First of all, I just his commentary, it's so it really seems to have passed the Trump era by, or the Trump era does seem to have passed him by a little bit, because it's just I don't see that as connecting. Like, it's not foaming at the mouth enough as he once was. But we saw a great example of what he's advocating for, taking it back in what was it, downtown LA, when Trump supporters attacked that Black woman walking home, and they just pulled her hair extensions out after she was trying to film them. Like, that's the kind of taking it back that he's talking about, in conjunction with what we saw at the Capitol building. And they just say these kinds of things casually, as if they're ordering a sandwich at a deli.
One of the things that's going to be fascinating to watch over the next month or so is going to be the scramble that right-wing talkers like Limbaugh and others are going to try and figure out where their audience is going to be. You saw Cernovich. He's going to be the one who's, telling you the truth. Although Cernovich, I feel like, like next week he could be saying the complete opposite if he finds it. But here is Dave Rubin, and still clinging on. This is him yesterday, clinging to the idea that, like, I don't know if it really is, Trump supporters who were in there. This is like, I just, like, how dumb. Well,
it's not. He's dumb, but he's also a bad faith actor.
Well, I was also going to say, like, how dumb do you have to think that your audience is? And then I stopped myself in the middle. But go ahead. Here's Dave Rubin.
He has no respect for his audience, please.
Okay, so what you're seeing there is a whole bunch of Trump supporters outside the White House, outside of the Capitol building, and what appears to be a bunch of them yelling that an Antifa member, now I don't know if he was Antifa, but somebody who apparently is not a Trump supporter is bashing the window. And they're all saying, no Antifa. They're trying to stop him.
They're all saying it was one woman.
Pushing and pulling him away from the window. I think that's just worth showing.
Just asking questions.
Oh, just worth showing. No agenda. I'm just trying to be a respected YouTube journalist and asking questions. Also, there's no context into what that woman is saying. She could be like, I'm against Antifa. Everything's Antifa. Like
one woman 200 yards away from the windows too, making accusations that it's an Antifa.
I think what she is saying, honestly, I think the most charitable view of that is, don't do that. That's what Antifa does. And like, okay, I'm willing to accept the premise that there were maybe thousands of people who were like, hey, wait a second, we shouldn't be smashing the windows of Congress. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to continue to support it. But I mean, like the idea that somehow, this is the thing, is that he knows, and this is why I say he knows, right? Like in this instance. Louis Gohmert, I heard Louis Gohmert on Wednesday, I guess it was Wednesday night, calling into the Sean Hannity show Wednesday afternoon, saying, I think it was Antifa. We're looking at the video, and it could be Sean. And then Sean Hannity was like, well, I mean, that's one of the options. And Mark Levin, same thing. It could be Antifa. I don't know. This is absolutely wrong.
Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
And here is like Dave Rubin. He just wants to put it into the bloodstream because look, he knows this is not Antifa, but we need to sort of like maintain some type of fiction. I mean, this is not a situation where you have like one random person banging on these windows. I mean, you have people showing up with handcuffs, the zip ties. You have people going in there with weapons. You have people going in there with full-on plans. Like there's a lot of these people.
You have white supremacists that we've identified. You have people wearing Holocaust-denying sweatshirts. Again, the zip ties. Again, the pipe bombs. And the now 5 deaths. But like, this is classic, just drop my pen, classic conservative playbook, right? Where they just put a little feeler out there in order to dispel the conversation, scatter it.
Here's a theory you can rely on.
Right.
Here is the
Law Boy.
Who is Law Boy?
He's on the 5-4 podcast.
Okay. The leading right-wing conspiracy is that a handful of clever leftists use crowd control tactics to trick thousands of patriots into storming a federal building, a theory that requires the MAGA protesters to be literally as dumb as a basic herd animal. I mean, that's true, but I'm sorry. It's also like there is just so like it's even worse than that, I think, because I can understand the concept of like, putting provocateurs into a crowd. I mean, that is, that can be an effective technique. But these people there were thousands of people pushing upon these gates to push them over. I'm sorry. I mean, like the idea that you needed one particular move. And the thing is, it's also this is not like, hey, one person smashes the window of a Target and a bunch of people go in to take TV sets. This building was assaulted from every possible entrance that exists. You had people climbing the walls.
That's how someone died.
Exactly. You had people climbing the wall, scaling the building. This was not like one window broken and people rush in.
And and for the purpose of stopping a vote count, not for stealing a TV after a bunch of righteous protests, protests for Black
clip
lives.
Was that clip of the woman who got maced, and she's like, "They maced us. They maced us. I got mace on my face. What's your name? Elizabeth. I'm from Tennessee. What were you doing in there? Well, it's a revolution. We were storming the Capitol. Like, wait, what?
You answered your own question.
Insane. Here's another clip. We have this theory that it could be Antifa that was involved in this. Let's take a look at what would have happened if someone suspected that someone was Antifa in this with these MAGA rioters.
This is an AP photojournalist, by the way. Right here.
In the helmet, in the black helmet.
Yeah.
We're coming for you! And you're not seeing it. You're
No, he's not. He's not in. Are you Antifa? You Antifa? No, he's not. Come on, guys. Come on. Are you Antifa? You Antifa? Come with me. Come on. We'll walk you out. Let's go. Come with me.
Well, at least there's a guy decent enough to walk the guy out as he's getting beat up for supposedly being Antifa.
Yeah, Ainsley Earhardt says, though, we really need to feel bad for those guys.
Yeah,
there's another guy who played up Maxine Waters' attack who was minimized in the entire day. And I think Michael Trace is his name. And I think he's disgusting.
Yeah, he made a huge stink and embarrassed us all at TYT by saying that Maxine Waters had pushed him when obviously that wasn't the case. So it seems like isn't the most intellectually consistent actor on the
Does
internet.
anybody for even a moment think that if Michael Tracy had been told 3 weeks ago, hey, they're going to storm into the Capitol, there's going to be 2 pipe bombs that are found, 5 people are going to die, there's going to be people coming in there with zip ties, with cuffs. You know what he would have said? Like, oh, you liberal resistance person, that's insane. Like, I mean, give me a break, right? Yeah. I mean, this is like the whole thing of downplaying this. Like, look, if what we saw is all there is, that is still incredibly heinous. I mean, and we just don't know. You've got Republican lawmakers involved in this, state lawmakers. We just don't know if what those Trump appointees at the DOD were doing when the National Guard was told to stand down, essentially. I mean, we don't know. And it's quite possible that there was absolutely no plan. The idea was just like go in there and scare them from but a lot of those guys showed up thinking they were there to do a bunch of different stuff. Armed
exactly. With zip ties to disrupt the election. A poorly executed coup is still a fucking coup. It's still a coup. Like, downplaying this, how many times do we have to have people on the left who we get it, you hate the Democratic Party, and I have a million criticisms of the Democratic Party and don't hold back, but that doesn't preclude you from doing 2 things at once. You can fight fascism, and you can call it out for what it is, and you can be as outraged as I was yesterday and so many other people were. And like how dark of a day that was. It was a super dark day. And then do the other thing too. You could still do both.
The other amazing aspect of this too is that there is absolutely no historical perspective on this or context.
Yeah.
Like, the idea is, if somebody could come to me tomorrow and say, look, I'm from the future and I can tell you that like this thing dies out. It dies out in 6 months and 12 months. There's nothing happening whatsoever with this. I'm from, 50 years from now, and I can tell you that things really just return to normal, that this has no implications in terms of future actions, that people don't cite this, that there aren't there's no mythologies built up about this. If somebody came to me tomorrow and say that, I would certainly perceive what took place in a different context. Still be horrible, right? 5 people die. It's still, a disgusting assault on just like the ability to elect a president. A lot of people got their heads bashed in for the right to vote. And that would all be the case. But to assume that, you have access to that person from the future. To look back on the last 20, 30, 40 years and see how these things build on themselves, to look back historically and see how they built the pushback to Reconstruction that led 6 million people to be card-carrying members of the KKK, 6% of the nation by 1920. To have no sense that this fits into any type of flow of history or could is just, you're just being ignorant. You're just taking a position because you got to juice your Patreon. You got to make sure you're going to, look and see what, the most skeptical of your sort of ilk is saying and follow their lead. I mean, that's what's going on here. And it's very easy. 6 months from now, it's quite possible, all this has calmed down and it doesn't look like it's growing again. But this more than likely, this will be built upon in the same way. In many respects, you look at Occupy and you see where people went from Occupy in terms of some people went towards like where Michael Tracy and Tim Pool are, but other people, the vast majority of those people got into organizing and they bring about, they're either doing like, mutual aid or they're doing organizing to stop people from getting evicted. I mean, there are implications to that in my mind are very positive. The idea that this type of organization that has this type of anger, that has this type of sense that they are so aggrieved that they have the right to yell USA, USA as they're going in and trashing the Capitol is going to lead to nothing that is detrimental is just like, I'm sorry, if I thought he was a good faith actor, I would say he's in total denial. And not just him. There's a lot of people who have this attitude.
Exactly. I mean, this is so on point, Sam. And it's the same naivete, but it's purposeful so it can enrich yourself as the one that they deride from people like Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Oh, the fever will break. Oh, we'll be able to compromise with these people. It's pretending that these situations exist in vacuums and aren't part of larger whole systems and movements. I mean, what happened yesterday is not going to go away. I mean, and again, like people joking, oh, when Trump's out of office, we don't have to ever hear from him again. Really? Like this kind of misinformation, conspiracy peddling, it has deep wounds. And the biggest one, and we've talked about this on the show, is the mistrust of the democratic process. That's not going away.
Nope.
Facts about who won elections, it's going to be disputed for the foreseeable future until you beat it. And what doesn't help is downplaying that kind of thing, because what we saw there, that abuse of the purported Antifa member who was actually the AP photojournalist, that's
my favorite is that these guys
embedded.
come around to like this position of both siderism that we generally see from like sort of just the mainstream media, right? Where
that they
it's
make
just sort
fun
of,
that they sneer at, right? Yeah. Rightfully so. But they're operating in the same space. They're operating in the same space, but except they have scragglier beards and they do it via Substack and Patreon and get to feel superior. It's gross.
I want to share a thread by Ari Kovler, this journalist here. I'll put his bio up.
So good.
And
I saw this.
This is from December 21st. And this is on January 6th, armed Trumpist militias will be rallying at D.C. at Trump's orders. It's highly likely that they'll try to storm the Capitol after it certifies Joe Biden's win. I don't think this has sunk in yet.
Wow.
These people are angry at the Democrats, are angry at the GOP for not suspending democracy. Let me scroll down one more. They are convinced that Congress will somehow declare Trump the winner on January 6th. Maybe Pence will refuse to count the electoral votes from states Biden won, or the Senate will throw those votes out, or Justice Thomas alternatively. And he's got like a bunch, I think it's in a different thread of his on the 19th actually, but of them saying just that when Trump said he promised a wild protest on January 6th, this is exactly like this is the plan of action, and they thought Pence would come through for him. And so I just want to bring that up in the context of the Capitol Police saying there wasn't intelligence that said they were going to storm the Capitol, because yes, and I mean I saw it. I know this is sort of my job, but I wasn't following that beat super closely. It was pretty apparent, I think, that they thought something big was going to happen.
Yeah.
So unbelievable.
And I don't know that I want to say like, I don't know that if I saw that, in that moment, I would be like, yeah, that's definitely going to happen. But I mean, the idea is that there were people who are sort of in tune with this.
Well, you're not responsible for Capitol security either.
I am not. That is that is absolutely true. I am not. What else we got? Oh, this is encouraging. Here is Bernie Sanders going to push the notion, and particularly in light of what Joe Manchin is saying, in this instance, where Joe Manchin has come out so strongly against $2,000 checks. But here is him seeking leverage. But here is Bernie Sanders basically going to function to push the Democrats to be to wield power. I mean, ostensibly, right? One of the reasons why Bernie Sanders is still going to be in the Senate as opposed to Labor Secretary, Marty Walsh has been named Labor Secretary, is because they want to maintain control of the Senate. Well, if you're going to maintain control of the Senate, use it. Use it. Here is Bernie Sanders on CNN.
To do. Let me just be very clear. As the incoming chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, I remember what happened in 2010, and that is the Democrats during the 2008-2010 period controlled the White House, they controlled the Senate, controlled the House. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And you remember what happened in 2010? Democrats got wiped out. They had the power, but they did not deliver for the American people. So what we have got to do right now, no ifs, buts, or maybes, is have an aggressive agenda that says we understand that millions of people, including my neighbors right here in Vermont, people lining up in their cars in order to get emergency food. People can't pay their medical bills. People are going deeper and deeper into debt. People are facing eviction. Millions of people have lost their jobs. We have to act and act now. And the first order of business, by the way, is to pass an emergency COVID-19 bill, which, among many other things, says to working class Americans, we know you're in pain, and we're going to get you a $2,000 check for every working class adult in this country. We are on your side. We are prepared to take on the big money interests who have so much power. We're going to expand healthcare to cover the uninsured. We're going to deal with student debt. We have got to be bold in a way that we have not seen since FDR in the 1930s.
And I think I think you probably amend that comment now based upon Manchin saying that he's not going to vote for it. They're going to have to bring a standalone bill. Yeah. And that's the way that this is the only way that this is going to work.
Suddenly I'm not so mad about seniority determining leadership now that Bernie's the head of the Senate Budget Committee.
Yes. Well, it taketh and it giveth.
I'm a hypocrite.
Here is
not really.
Here's a clip that Mike will make it fun going into the weekend. This is Lindsey Graham heading home after his good old speech was like, hey, come on, everybody, we're going to be fine. We're gonna be fine.
I may have had a whiskey
the
sour
Senate floor.
Or
exactly.
two
I've had a mint
I was
julep.
a hostage.
I've had a mint julep.
Mint julep. I'm sorry, he
he
doesn't drink whiskey like some sort of cosmopolitan. That's probably more his.
I had a mint julep with some. I just put in. Actually, I put in. Oh gosh, I don't know the name. But anyways, here he is at the airport trying to head home, and this guy. He's complaining about how Donald Trump has been treated for the past 4 years. Clearly does not remember when the months before Donald Trump became the leader of his party. But here he is at the airport reaping what he has sowed. I mean, this is literally like,
it's biblical. It's biblical.
Yeah. I mean, if we could, like, short of literally planting something and harvesting it, this is as close as you can get to making, to actually making it real as opposed to a metaphor.
Born and raised in South Carolina, I will make sure. I'm not going to touch him. I'm not going to do anything. I'm allowed to speak. I am allowed to speak. I'm not going to touch my attorney right now. I'm going to make a statement to the American people. That is how you don't worry about. You work for us. You work for us. You're safe, Lindsey, I promise you. We just want answers. We are not going to touch you. We will not touch you. We're not going to hear it. We're not going to touch you. We're going to hear it.
I would be chanting along with that.
Today.
Q. They're chasing Lindsey Graham here, folks. They're chasing him quite away outside the airport.
Yeah. So that a Politico reporter that was sent to him by a source, he said, you think about how Lindsey Graham began his descent into Trumpism, right? Where he staked his flag in the ground at the start of the primary, which people forget Graham ran for president, and said he's a racist, he's a xenophobe, he will be the destruction of the Republican Party. He went on cable news and he just lit into him. He's become the biggest bootlicker of his in the Senate, has completely crawled to his feet and kissed the ring and kissed his feet maybe twice, did both, just cover his bases. And then now he's being chased out of airports is that in North Carolina, by his constituents?
I don't know where that is. No,
that's at Reagan Airport.
That's at Reagan. He's headed to South Carolina. The people forget.
South Carolina.
Do people remember? Donald Trump gave out his phone number. Gave out his cell phone number.
He doxed him. He doxed him.
He doxed him. And after all that, it's like, well, he's my president now. So there it is.
It really is his arc, even more so than Ted Cruz's, because Ted Cruz is savvier, I would say, even though he's like potentially even more vile. I know.
God, I don't know. Ted Cruz's arc is very, very similar. In fact, in some ways, he's still on board. I mean, Lindsey Graham is just sort of like, he's just that guy. Like the moment he saw, okay, he's no longer president, I'm going to come out now and try and play like I'm reasonable. I mean, this guy, honestly, unbelievable.
I mean, and he has this kind of inclination of a true authoritarian person is why I'm picking on him here, or saying he's the crystallization of this movement, is because he needs somebody to follow. I mean, his buddy John McCain, that's how he lived in his shadow. He was a part of that. He kissed that ring, and then he's passed away. He follows Trump and comes, along with the party there and does whatever he tells him to, no matter how debasing and embarrassing it is. And then that is the natural culmination. That is the anti-hero arc for Lindsey Graham.
Let's go to the IMs here. Sam, not to toot my own horn, but can I get a shofar to celebrate my 50th birthday? This is TMBS is my jam.
Let's go. That's not tooting your own horn, but you are tooting the
shofar. It's me tooting. It's tooting your own shofar. All right, let me. I'm gonna call in. We'll take a couple of calls. If I can get this thing going here. There we go. Militant apathy. Oh, we did that already. Okay. Asiek. Matt is not wrong. We can't forget about these right-wing media bubbles that be that InfoWars or OWN. It's just one thing it isn't just one thing that's a problem. I agree. Ice Teamfer. One of the reasons it's hard to disaggregate something like calling Fauci a liar is because Fauci did indeed lie. You can pretend that he was righteous in lying, but he lied. It's not helpful to pretend that he didn't. I think that's true. it's unclear to me exactly what motivated his lying in this instance. To some extent, right? Public health policy is not totally frank, always, right? Because if I say a vaccine, and in this instance, all the evidence that we have with this vaccine is that it's incredibly safe, right? There has been, we have now millions of people who've received at least a dose of this vaccine, and there's been some allergic reactions, but broadly speaking, like almost to a person, literally, it is incredibly safe. But broadly speaking, the idea of vaccines being safe, they are in terms of when you look at a population, because it's relative to catching the flu, let's say, or catching, or I don't know, getting polio or whatever it is. There are individuals always who are going to potentially get sick from a vaccine. There are more individuals who will get sick with the lack of a vaccine, but they won't be the same people. And so, this is the idea with the masks. I think, I don't know if we know the full story, right? To the extent that it's been reported, I haven't seen it. They were worried that there was going to be a run on masks. And I don't think they fully understood that, like, you could just wear a t-shirt over your face and it would be helpful. Or we don't know what was coming out of the CDC. And it's quite possible that there was, political pressure to undersell what was happening, because we know that's what the administration wanted to do. But again, if you say someone's a liar, or that you characterize it as a lie in the same way that Donald Trump just lied, when he says, I called out the National Guard. No, you did not. You're just making that up now to make it seem like you were responsible. In the context of Fauci, to the extent that there was misinformation put out, I think it's a combination of a lack of understanding or a fear from a public policy basis that they didn't want to create a run on PPE. And on some level, that is a problem because it does build mistrust. But I also am not quite convinced that they understood that this thing was so airborne. We talked to at least one or two epidemiologists in April who were like, it's becoming increasingly clear it's airborne. And there's no doubt that the national health apparatus was slow in the uptake for this, without a doubt.
And that does change things if it's airborne, because there is pre-existing literature about mask use for things that aren't so airborne, that it makes you, this is the
touching the mask.
Yes, it makes you lax in other areas. But I think if a right winger was emphasizing the Fauci lied thing, I would say, well, yeah, he was covering up a market failure or a fear of one, that we don't have a health infrastructure that can meet the needs of a pandemic in this country. I mean, Dave Rubin dating profile. This latest Q grift is that it still isn't over, and that the certification by Congress is the final straw they need to lock up the whole globalist cabal for this. There's 200,000 sealed indictments that are for election fraud dating back to 2016. Too bad these idiots have no idea how the law works, and the fraud would have been committed back when the initial votes were cast, and Congress would only be doing their lawful duty. It makes no sense whatsoever. We should market a hunt-a-killer to these Q people because they would love the whole bulletin board with the string collaborating on a crime fantasy. Salinas Lefty, MMA journalist Luke Thomas had a good point on tech censorship. He said, if you want to talk about the danger of tech censorship, you better have an answer as to how to deal with the dangers of unfettered misinformation. He said, if you only have an answer to one problem, you don't have an answer. Thought it was a good point. I think that's true. I mean, to the extent that we can do anything, it has to be an antitrust response, it seems to me. Bottom structure. I no longer receive emails from my older family. I received numerous screenshots through text of Facebook memes explaining the evils of the Democratic Party, how the election was stolen, how the attack on the Capitol was Antifa. I preferred the emails.
Colorado guy. For anyone wanting to call Joe Manchin, his DC number is 202-224-3954. Much love, MR Crew. Really, the call should go to Pelosi and to Schumer and say, stand alone, Bill. Stand alone, Bill. Winnipeg Craig, Sam, have you looked at any more crowdfunding for the infrastructure to run an AM radio network? You mentioned it before. I used to be a board for nonprofit radio. It strikes me as an extremely viable idea. It does, but it's not necessarily the idea for me to initiate. I just frankly do not have the time to do that. Here for Hugo. So now that more people have died here than in Benghazi, is there going to be hearings with Trump sitting for hours? It really is amazing to me, the reluctance of the Democrats in terms of like to hold people to account. It's just horrible. It's not just the Facebook. You need to look into the NTD network on YouTube, paying close attention to the comment section.
What does NTD stand for?
I don't know.
NTD network.
They live stream all the right-wing events online.
New Tang Dynasty?
Considering the myths we believe, the pathos we engage in, the misinformation, certainly at least one of those DC cops has got to be seriously questioning their allegiance to any thin blue wall, stand together ideology that might have held before. Would the crew agree? Maybe. I don't know.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
They're saying, like, based upon, I think I think the idea is that, like, with all of like there's got to be some cops who are like, wait a second, these people aren't my people, or something to that effect. Buckaroo Samurai, as James Baldwin said, when a Pole or an Irishman or a white man raises a gun in defiance, they're seen as freedom fighters. And when heroes, when a black man does it, they're criminalized and told to get back in their place. Limbaugh continuing that rhetoric 60 years later, indeed. Sam Seder OnlyFans. Having an actual union member run the labor department is a good omen for the future, as opposed to some new Keynesian nightmare or some lawyer from the DNC who happened to be getting Doritos out of the vending machine. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, Barney Walsh was a union leader before he was mayor. Depressed Canadian. Saying it was Antifa behind the riots is similar to Holocaust denial from neo-Nazis. They both deny the crime took place, but also publicly endorse and demand a repeat of the same crime, but only worse. Dr. Chaos, MD. Anyone else looking forward to Graham running in the GOP primary in 2024 and getting 0% of the vote? Aaron from Denver. The crying woman that was maced was literally holding an onion in her towel to fake the tears. You can see her dab it to it. There's also a belief that the onion in some way inhibits mace. So it's hard to know. But if she she could have been handed it, who knows? I saw a picture that somebody posted where that woman had an onion in her hand. Yeah, indeed. Illuminati. Hey, Michael Tracy has also sustained a beating like that in service of reporting, so you got to give him respect. Card Talk guys. It's easy to remember how to say Del Cab because it's right next to decarburetor. Axtimus. Have Matt Iglesias and Michael Tracy ever been seen in the same place? They're the same dude, I swear. Bandangino. I have hoped that it was easier for the Nazis to pin the Reichstag fire on the anti-fascists without video evidence, but the Republicans are sure still trying. And on that note, any push for new laws or police power from this attack needs to be rebuked. Indeed.
Both great points, just because it is amazing how don't believe your lying eyes has become like standard.
Yeah, there's a story in Wall Street Journal about Biden saying he wants to push for anti-terrorism stuff. So I think we need to stop using the term terrorism, even though I think that's the intent of these people.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to lead to counterterrorism responses.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Such a zoomed out view. I mean, that's in the best way, because like
I think,
like,
go on. This is the danger of the push for this is like there is a difference between pointing out the disparity in how if one group of people did something, if black people, if brown people, if Muslim people do one thing, and on the other hand, white people do one thing, it's important to point out the disparity of the reaction. However, the way to redress this is not to say that we should necessarily respond in the most draconian fashion to all of it to make it equal. We can also say we need to respond better when a one cohort of people does something versus the other cohort. Do you follow me? In other words, that's why I am not necessarily in favor of throwing around the word terrorism, because it is equitable relative to who we have applied it to before. I would rather not apply it to a much wider swath of people, because what Joe Biden's going to do is he's going to introduce a bill. They're going to have somebody in Congress. Chris Coons is going to introduce it, whatever it is. And it's going to pass, because these things pass with a majority all the time. And all it is going to do is it's going to end up being used against vegans who are protesting in front of a pork processing facility, or it's going to be used against, anti-fascists, or it's going to be used. I mean, this is a bad idea. We have plenty. There was plenty of opportunity to prevent what went on yesterday. There's plenty of statutory authority to punish these people. There's plenty of statutory authority to have known and surveilled these people and made aware of what they were doing beforehand if there was anything that they found that was going to potentially be violent. We don't need more laws on this accord. And remember, we just got a prime example of what happens when you plant a seed in one administration and it comes to fruition in another, right? Like, it doesn't have to be theoretical. Would you want this power in the hands of Donald Trump now? Would you want this new power in the hands of Josh Hawley? It's not a theory anymore. We've just seen a perfect example of it. Let's go to the phones.
Also, just the note that Manchin just backtracked a little bit.
Nice.
On 2000, right? So, like, it's just make me an offer, basically.
I could be open to certain things if, was
Literally
feeling
like a mob
in the right
movie.
way. I mean, now that you're asking, actually, there's a couple of things that I might need to feel more comfortable about this. Maybe 1,999 is a number I could get behind, of course, if there were other things that came along with it, like maybe a certain chairmanship of a certain committee, or perhaps maybe a little bit more funding for my office. And, I always thought there should be a direct flight from Washington Airport to somewhere in West Virginia. I know, I'm spitballing.
Yeah,
Calling from the
that's an offer
361
I can't
area code.
refuse.
Hello, this is James.
James,
I have a question.
where are you calling from, James?
Texas.
All right.
All right, I have a question. Do you think the Democrats will try to pack the court, and do you think they
No.
should? Like, is it an
Yes.
ethical thing to do?
Yes, I think they should pack the court. No, I don't think that they will. Joe Manchin will not be a part of that. I think they would need closer to 54, 55, 56 votes, because you need to get rid of the filibuster. And to pack the court, you need to change the statutes. So not happening. Do I think they should? Yes, but that's off the table. And November 3rd made that off the table.
Wow. So would it be ethical for Republicans to pack the court if they were in the same situation?
Ethical?
Yeah.
Well, it's perfectly, I guess, ethical at this point is really, I mean, I don't even know what ethics mean. I mean, it was a breach of the norms, but initially, but yeah, I mean, I think look, I think the point is that we're living in an era where these supposed norms have been blown away. So I think that's what you do in this context of this politics. I mean, I don't know that ethical doesn't come into play in this situation. I think it's unethical to do what, let's say, Kelly Loeffler did, or what David Perdue did. That is, it's legal. Technically, it appears, but I don't think you should be using your inside information to enrich yourself in the stock market. But in terms of like what are political moves, I would get rid of the filibuster, and that would, and I think if the Republicans did that, I think that's fine. Anything that democratizes the these things, I think is I'm in favor of. I wouldn't describe it as ethical or unethical, though.
Okay.
I appreciate the call. Calling from a 323 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Oh, it's Jonathan from California. How are you?
I'm well. Jonathan, California, what's on your mind?
What's on my mind is I have to thank everybody there for being a place that I actually found. I thought I was progressive, but I actually was neoliberal, and I didn't even realize it until 2016. And I found myself hitting a wall with mainstream media and news and MSNBC, and I tried to find somewhere else, and I found YouTube, where people are actually talking about ideas. And over the course of these last couple of years, I'm finding that people are hitting another wall. And I watch you every day and I listen every day, and the discussion always seems to come to a point of exhaustion, going, how can people do this? And even yesterday, you're like, what can we do from this? And I feel like in the discussion in the community, it's just a lack of identifying the fact that it's not necessarily someone else or another party that's doing this, that it's us, and where we fall on that spectrum. And so as I was watching people storming the Capitol, I was obviously appalled, and yet part of it, I wasn't appalled by the belief that they could do that, if that makes sense.
You weren't appalled by the belief, right? I mean, in other words, it wasn't necessarily surprising. It was just seeing it in action was probably
like not shocking, but mortifying is how I'm putting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and that's not. I mean, that doesn't make me complacent. I'm not happy about that, but it didn't surprise me. So I'm sitting there watching, going, "Oh, well, this is a section of our country has an opportunity to see what that kind of, Cori Bush is in that building." But I know that in the back of her mind, she's all like, "This is also Tuesday for me."
Right. Right.
I'm not trying to put a blame on anybody or point a finger. I think that this is an amazing opportunity that we have now because COVID and the structure of the economy has created white Jim Crow.
Do you think it's created a white Jim Crow? I mean, in what way has this created a white Jim Crow?
Well, I don't say this week. I'm saying that the reason that our conflicts are building up to this point is that the things that happened every day to a section of people are now happening to more people, and so we're flabbergasted by it. But
how is that? I think. I'm not 100% sure I know what you're saying, but I'm caught up on this idea that there is first of all, there's the notion of Jim Crow specifically targeted a group of people in this country who were in many cases at that time former slaves or children of former slaves, and there's nobody in particular who's being, to the extent that you're saying that COVID is restricting people in some way. It's not just white people who are being restricted.
Oh, well, let me clarify then, because I'm not all my ideas, but let's put it this way. I think that it's really difficult. It's really funny because we're talking about a white supremacist rally that busted into the Capitol, and many other places, not necessarily here, it's why I listen, are debating whether it was white supremacy. And I think that it leads to a bigger issue, is that we talk about race as a moral issue, but we don't recognize that it was a chosen economic strategy to create wealth. And so we're arguing about trying to create a world in which we're more moral, but I don't think that's as effective. It's just understanding that it was a chosen strategy in the beginning to build the country and to build wealth. And so therefore, it's not a question of whether we're good or bad, but it's very easy to dismiss it when we put it in that box.
Yeah, no, I understand your point. I mean, at least in that regard. But I would say that I'm convinced of two things. That one, that obviously, slavery was an economic decision that was made, like, hey, we can get free labor. I think there's a lot of other factors, though, that have to go into that, right? Because you have to have an absence of or a presence of a certain other ideologies to be able to do that. It's not just a question of money. I mean, I can have a desire for money, but I will make decisions based upon other values that exist in my mind. And there are certain things I won't do because of values that exist in my mind. It's not necessarily did I just hang up? How did that happen again? Shoot, are you there? Son of a gun. I'm on the wrong thing. Hold on. Stay on the line. Stay on the line. I just lost my internet for a second. Bear with me, folks.
You should be back now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's way too big.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear you because I had lost the connection. So I was just saying, I'm sorry, I got cut off. So the point is that, and it may be the case, even if I was to stipulate that it was, exclusively an economic arrangement. I mean, you also have to believe, obviously, that these people are commodities, whereas other people are not commodities. There may be an economic incentive to determine that some people are just commodities and other people are actually people. Even if I was to stipulate that's all that's involved in that, which I don't think it is. I think there's a lot of religiosity and you want to call it morality or just sort of opinion. But even if I stipulate that was the case 300 years ago, 500 years ago, the bottom line is that there are belief systems that are built up around that are real. They continue to be real, even if they did not necessarily, even if I was to stipulate that they were not organic, that they were developed because of the economic interests of people. Those things are now real and have taken on a reality to themselves. But we talked about with Rick Perlstein yesterday, this is the country. This is the America that you should know, because this is the America. There's a certain amount of authoritarianism, I think, that is also embedded in the eye and being able in the act of being able to own slaves, right? So I'm not sure I fully totally grip what you're saying, but yes, I think there's a lack of nuance in this in some of this, but I also think that I don't know. I think there's places where I think a lack of nuance at this close to an event like this is also very understandable.
Well, then let me try to be really targeted, because everything you said I totally agree with. But what I think is difficult is that by not acknowledging that we made that choice initially, I'm not saying that we're above it, of course, but everything you said, it was put in place to bolster it over time. So it actually looks like more of a primary moral issue than it actually is. It actually has now become more of a moral issue.
It very well, I mean, look, at this point, it's quite possible, it seems to me, that it could be more of a moral issue.
Oh, no, it totally is. Pardon me for interruption. What I mean is that if we talk about race and changing that and making life more equal, quote unquote, from a moral perspective, we are always going to be fighting on the epidermis of what I think the structural foundation is.
I understand the argument. Yeah, I understand.
I
understand the argument.
Oh, it's
I understand the argument.
Social morality,
I understand the argument.
But if we just separate that,
I would say,
then
listen, I understand the argument. And the argument is this, that and again, I'm stipulating because I'm not sure I 100% agree with this, but that the origins of these racial disparities and racism are inherently economic, and that as such, even if the moral, as you call it, or the societal, or the attitudinal, however you want to call that, even if that tissue has built up significantly, and it wasn't organic, but it's been built up to being a real thing that exists, your argument is that ultimately, to unwind this, you still need to go back to its origin, which is economic. And I would only say that, like, I think there's some truth to that. There are times where I think that is absolutely the case, but I'm not convinced that you can do that. That it is a solo as simple as that simple project, because just because, even if I was to stipulate that was the origin of it, it doesn't necessarily follow that you can correct it at this point, right? Like, I mean, I can say, for instance, just to give an analogy, right? Like, if my left knee is injured and I start to walk in such a way to compensate for that, and I end up screwing up my right ankle, it does not necessarily follow that I can repair that right ankle by simply fixing my left knee, because the damage has been done on that right ankle. Now, I may need to fix that left knee so that I can get back to some type of balance, but I still have a problem with my right ankle that isn't going to necessarily be fixed just because I am now walking, in a balanced fashion again. And so I think that, like, that, the potential of that dynamic existing, that having 200 years of systemic attempts to maintain a racist system following the emancipation of the slaves has created in and of itself something that is not necessarily fixed by a class analysis or an economic analysis exclusively. And so, that's the only thing I would say. I don't know that it is sufficient to simply just say, like, here's $2,000, however you want to address it.
I would just say that, like, the sort of, like, racial violence that the state has done isn't just exclusively economic. I think that I agree with people that say that's the main one that makes these sorts of oppressions significant. That's why we don't care about, say, bigotry against white people as much, because they're on top of that.
And it's why we didn't bring women only exclusively over here and call them not people to build the country itself. It's just what is primary. There was a primary situation that we actually have to rectify,
but
to actually get to everything else.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying is that's what I'm saying is that, like, it does not necessarily follow that that's the case. And that's what my analogy is supposed to be about the problem with my ankle is because, my problem with my ankle may have been a function of a problem with my knee, but just correcting my knee does not necessarily solve the problem of my ankle at this point.
100%. But if you go to a doctor, the first thing he's going to do is fix your knee.
He very well may. He very well may. Or he may say, like, which is hurting.
I don't mean it in one act.
Which is hurting more.
I just meant as a strategy.
He may also say,
looking at how to move forward, as opposed to, originally, right, there was an agreement that we never lived up to. What I'm finding is that there's a parallel, in many ways, to where we were in March when we told everybody to go home and that we were going to pay them to stay home so that we could all be healthy. And then we decided that we weren't going to pay them. And then we said, well,
but
really
who? Well,
and
first off,
that energy is coming.
Well, okay, I listen, but I got to go. But I mean, nobody. Sadly, there was no promise that we were going to pay you, right? Like, I mean, there should have been. There should have been a policy, but we did have a significant portion of our government, right? The chief executive of our government, essentially, basically saying, like, well, it's not really real. And, so there was also, like, sort of, fighting against that. I don't know that Joe Biden would have done anything any differently, frankly. I mean, I think there would have been a higher level of competence.
No, I agree. It'll be more.
I don't know. I think it would have.
I just feel like more people are feeling more people in general, like Jim Crow is trickling up to a larger percentage of the population.
You keep saying Jim
can't use
Crow,
that
and I'm not
metaphor.
sure that you keep saying Jim Crow, and I just don't think that is. I don't think that's what you want the description you want it to be. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that there are that economic deprivation and a sense of like unfairness it may be creeping, but I would not use Jim Crow because I just don't think that's an apt analogy. But I appreciate the call. I mean, that's why I think like initially I was really confused with what you're saying, because Jim Crow was a structure to oppress a very specific group of people for very specific reasons. I don't think that there's
Jim Crow for everybody isn't
Jim
thing.
Crow. I mean, that's like just almost definitional.
Yeah.
And the other point I wanted to make is like, while I agree with people who say like the class thing is the preeminent one, the baggage, like the amount of actual work on the cultural front of these things that the state has done in terms of like white supremacy is something that, or even just like, think of Hollywood, right? Like the height of Hollywood is basically like lily white. And like, that's a cultural problem that I think I'm not opposed to people addressing.
And it also just, I mean, removing race from the equation would also fundamentally misunderstand, for example, the phenomenon we saw yesterday, and like would it do a disservice to answering it going forward. I know that was kind of the gist of the call, but like those folks, as we've mentioned, it seems like they were well off in some instances.
And I will say, you know, I'm not convinced the doctor would say to me, like, we're going to deal with your knee first. The doctor might say, like, you know, it's in those situations, it's the ankle that sends you to the doctor.
Yeah.
And you may want to deal with the ankle first, or maybe both simultaneously. So I don't think there is this, even if you accept the notion, and I'm not quite frankly sure that I do. I think, you know, Gerald Horne would push back on a lot of this, like, and I think others that we have interviewed in the past, that there is other roots, particularly religious roots to questions of slavery and everything that is constructed to allow for that. But even if you were to stipulate that it was exclusively or even primarily an economic incentive to have black people enslaved, as opposed to just sort of slaves in general, right? I mean, it's obviously easier if you have, you know, the other being enslaved.
The specific reasons are because, like, unlike Native Americans who could run away in like mass and come back and fight you, like they shipped the Native American war criminals to be slaves in Barbados because it's the same issue. They couldn't run away.
Exactly.
And for instance, they also brought slaves from different parts of Africa and tried to mix them up as much so they didn't share languages in common, right? Like that they were conscious about a lot of this stuff.
Right, of course. And the you know, so that there's definitely a sort of like that pragmatic economic, right? I mean, because ultimately that's an economic decision. But, you know, I want to diminish their, I guess, you know, in a very sort of like crass way, you could say their bargaining power, right? Like if they don't have the ability to communicate with each other, then their bargaining power is diminished. If they don't have the ability to leave the job, you know, run away and have a, you know, a society that they're familiar with, their bargaining power. I mean, it's a crass way of putting it, because there's no negotiation here, but you're diminishing their power even more.
It meant dollars and cents to the masters. I mean, they had to take measures against that stuff.
Right. And so, I mean, the license to do it on some level was not just an economic incentive. Like, I think you needed other elements that would inhibit. But if I stipulate that was the primary reason for the development of all of the racism, even if I was to stipulate that, you still have to contend with the idea that, like, you know, this stuff has metastasized, and it has been specifically, even if it was for economic reasons, injected into the culture. And people have grown up with this, having lost sight of the original economic incentive, right? Like, because it's not necessarily in your economic benefit to be racist anymore in certain situations. Then you you still have to deal with that existing problem, and you may have to unwind it. And it may not, the key may not just be economic to unwind this stuff. I was reading some thread on Strasserites, I think it is, right? And I think, do I have that right? Strasserites? And how it played out in Nazi Germany. And there are people who perceive, let me see if I have this in the front of my head right now. There are people who perceive that capitalism brings about racism. And there are people who also perceive that capitalism brings about anti-racism. And so you had Strasserites, sort of peeling off, thought within the context of the Nazis, who were like, part of the problem with capitalism is it promotes wokeism.
I would say, that's the thing with the white fragility thing is I think there's a way where anti-racism comes to mean a managerial project and not a structural demand.
Right.
Right. And that's, I think, the danger there.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what those Strasserites believe. I mean, so when you see, Tucker Carlson rail on capitalism, what he's railing on is capitalism responding to some form of anti-racism in many respects, right? Because it's capitalism's harsh implications for a specific group of people.
Jim Crow for white people.
Okay, we'll take a couple more calls. Calling from a 551 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's A Square.
A Square. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Very quickly, I sent you an IM, so you can disregard. I just wanted to say Emma and Jamie and you some great points this week. Conservatism has to be defeated. I mean, this is just, you and I go a little bit back, right? And so I remember when they spit at Congressman Lewis. So in addition to conservatism, I think there's other things that conservatism has engendered in that are tied to conservatism, like racism. So I find this exchange that you had with the caller very interesting. And I always appreciate, by the way, when you find a way to educate somebody like you did with that caller. So just let me say that on the fly. Jamie, I think, mentioned something about Jimmy Dore. What an inconsequential and destructive thing, especially in light of what's going this week. Wasn't it 4,000 people? I think we broke the record that died of COVID yesterday.
Yes, 4,100 people.
This is unbelievable. So this is why I'm even more infuriated about what happened on Wednesday. And so I was also thinking about Manchin flipping. Sam, I'm also thinking about Kristen Sinema flipping. I just think this thing that happened on Wednesday is so bad for them, and they do rely on a certain percentage of Democratic votes in their districts, so that might hold them.
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, that is even more reason why you push impeachment, because you make the Republican Party toxic. In fact, next week on Friday, I'm hoping we're going to have Osita Nwainvu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I doubt I am.
No, it's a hard name. But
was I close?
He's I think
how do you
so.
Pronounce it?
Osita, I think is how you pronounce.
What is it?
Nwainvu.
He's written a piece in the New Republic about this very topic, particularly in terms of the Republicans. And so, yes, I think it's a great point. Like, if you want to talk about disciplining, overnight, literally, to the extent that Joe Manchin, I don't know that he was, or Kristen Sinema were contemplating like, hey, I could jump over to the Republicans and I would be completely feted. That
King and Queen of the Hill.
King and Queen of the Hill. But right now, that brand has been made toxic. Now, the question is like, how durable can the Democrats make that brand toxic? Well, impeachment is a great way to do it, because it's basically saying like, you got a choice. You're either going to side with the vast majority of Americans who were repulsed by that, or you're going to and screw over a 20% of your base. That's the price. That's the price to rejoin the rational, responsible people in this country. You're going to have to screw over that 20%, or you don't, and the choice is yours. And this is the type of leverage. This is a situation like, and this is when people don't understand. Like, some of the dum-dums are saying, like, wait a second, you said don't have a vote on Medicare for all because it was performative, which I didn't say, but it's performative. But impeachment that's not going to pass is not performative. This is a wedge issue for the Republicans. The Medicare for all is a wedge issue for the Democrats, right? Like I don't understand how people don't even understand to do the math. Medicare for all, when you put that up, is going to lose at a minimum of like 300, I don't know, 260 to whatever, 100 and maybe 50 or whatever it is.
And then you don't even weed out the purported people.
But even if you do weed out the Democrats who are against it,
their vote means nothing.
Even if you do weed out the Democrats who are against it at that point, it's like we already know 90% of who those people are anyways. And you're attacking the one vehicle that we've had that has been successful for primarying the ones that we don't like, right? Like AOC, you take AOC out of the equation and you've lost, I don't know, 30 or 40% of the primaries that you were trying to win anyways.
Well, because of her fundraising.
But when you force...
They're not interested in any of that strategy. I mean, Jimmy Dore is just trying to promote himself and whatever delusion he has that he's going to be president, or at least he's going to fleece a bunch of idiots, to give him money too. Listen, I'm going to let you go, but let's just add this for the discussion for you guys as you continue to go forward. I have been watching some of what Steve Schmidt has been saying, only because I know he is the king of the anti-Trumpers, right? And so I find it very interesting that part of their strategy is going to be to out all of the corporations that are donating money to Cruz, Rubio, Hawley, and all of these people. The other thing that I find very interesting is he's already said who he wants for leader of the House. And who do you think that is? Liz Cheney. So I leave you with that. So I know we listen to the Rush Limbaugh and all of these folks to know what they're doing, but that's another.
Yeah, I think that's an important place to look.
What is the next plan?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Appreciate
Guys,
the call.
Thank
Good point.
you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. That's a great point. They're lining up and they're trying to fashion the next Republican Party. Folks, we're out of time for calls. I apologize. I'm going to have to say goodbye. We'll read a couple more IMs. Should we play this Jimmy Dore thing? I don't want to today. It's just, I'm too tired.
We've exhausted this. We can just summarize it, right?
Well, the summary is just Jimmy Dore is upset because after crapping all over DSA and Justice Democrats, he's explaining to everybody that they've got to come to him because of his media platform.
Kingmaker.
He's a kingmaker. They've got to come to him. Like
very Joe Manchin of him.
It's just the attitude of look.
Your show has been around a long time, Sam. Can you ever imagine having that thought?
No. And I was going to say this, and I've come across people who've had, that reminds me of Ed Schultz, frankly, who had a very similar attitude. There are people, here's the thing, and I do this because, this is how I make my living. Right. And so this is not, this is not what I do is not an altruistic, this is not altruism. Okay. It is, I am fortunate. This is what I want to do. It's also the way I make my living, but I do feel, so I want to make it absolutely clear. This is not an altruistic thing, but I do feel like my job, the reason why I'm doing this as opposed to still doing sitcoms, the reason why is, and contrary to I may have been a failed stand-up, although I wasn't really. I didn't really quite enjoy it. But I certainly had the ability to continue on with my career in show business. This is a lot more meaningful to do. The like part of my feeling of responsibility is to promote the writers, the ideas, the organizations with whom I agree with politically. Period. End of story. Like that is part and parcel of the project. Is what, like on Air America, like Janina and I would talk about, like, we want to do what we can to make this person's book a bestseller. I want people to know this writer. I want this organization to succeed. Like and you come across a lot of these people, like when you deal with them, sometimes, not a lot of them actually, but a small percentage of them, they're a-holes. You don't like them. They're dicks, whatever. The bottom line is, like, I endeavored to not let that in any way influence my desire to have them on and promote their work if I thought what their work was helpful to people or to the politics. Just as like my obligation to maintain, like, to make this different than like me being on a sitcom, right? Like, I mean, that's just, that was always embedded in it. It is impossible for me to imagine. And Brandon, I think, can attest to this. Like, I can think of one person who was just so rude and put the show on multiple days in jeopardy because they canceled the last minute and, like, completely offhanded, that I finally said, like, I'm not booking that guy anymore, because even though I like his work, like, it's just too hard. But I've never, like, and I've been doing this 15 years, thousands of guests, some who are like rude and this and that, but I'm like, if they have something of value, I'm going to put them on. The idea that people need to curry favor with me to get on if I agree with what they're doing politically is so foreign. And it really is, like, look, far more people to this day, Emma excluded, recognize me from, that one little tiny thing I did on Sex and the City than this show.
I found out, I muted myself by accident. I found out about this 2 days ago. He is the guy on Sex and the City who spits out his steak.
Everybody knows this, but
I don't know this.
The point being is that I think for some people, this is their big taste at fame, and they're going to leverage that. And they're going to, and that is where their power emanates from. I am very proud of the fact that I can, have Rick Perlstein on and have his ideas and have, and be able to say to him, like, 60,000 people watched, this interview one time on YouTube, or, 150,000 people heard you in one form or another after yesterday, or something like that. I'm proud about that, because I'm bringing value to him. And I think those ideas are worth it. The idea that you would say to Justice Democrats, we agree, but you should be currying favor for me because I can help you. That attitude is, in my mind, demented. It is perverse. Like, if you think this is a good idea, you should be doing everything in your power to present it and to broadcast it, because that's what your project should be. The idea that you even contemplate, like, who should be courting you to get access to your platform in doing what we do, like, it makes sense to me if, like, you're, I don't know, Jimmy Fallon, you're like, you want to come on and do your business, you got whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, to do what we do in this, like, it is such a really, in many respects, a privilege to be able to do what we do. And it is, the dues you pay for that are, like, in my mind, and not even the dues, it's like the obligation you have is to promote ideas that you think are good and organizations that you think are doing good work. It should not be a function of how much they, kiss the ring or whatever. and I think it's also sort of twisted to perceive yourself as having a ring. But
well, it is, but especially if you're him. And also the point too is that this is the guy that came up with this strategy, right? Like this is his mentality. Whatever you think, like.
We should play the clip also. I think.
Okay,
it's not.
It's relevant to think about where the strategy originated from because it's so embedded in everything about who he is so embedded in that.
You cannot disentangle
strategy.
that. But here,
yep.
People are saying that I need to be nicer to people to get on board with Medicare for all. They're supposed to be being fucking nice to me. Do you realize that? Do you realize you have it backwards? Do you realize if the DSA has a platform that they want to implement and I have a media platform, they could use it because we agree on it? I'm not supposed to fucking court them. They're supposed to court me. I jump on board their idea and they come and attack me.
Okay.
I jump on board the Justice Democrats idea and they come and attack me. That's what they're fucking doing.
All right. I mean,
there you go.
I'm sorry. It's just like full on demented.
Putting yourself at the center of what you're pretending to be a policy idea is a policy idea. This is the principled person who wants to get you health care, right?
And it also occurs to me when I see that mentality, and it had never occurred to me before, that he has that sort of like, there is some resent that TYT built his platform. Like it never really occurred to me before, but
if you go to youtube.com/TYT comedy, for instance, that was the original name of his channel.
Right. And like that show,
paid for by Jeffrey Katzenberg, motherfucker.
At one point over several years, we were part of the, I don't know what the term is with YouTube, like
the TYT network, right?
No,
oh.
That's just sort of like the marketing.
Okay.
But there's a term with YouTube where you are under the umbrella financially of a thing. They don't pay you. They take a cut of what you generate ostensibly because they're going to help with your SEO. I think Kyle still has that relationship. Pacman at one point had that relationship with TYT. It was because they had the expertise on YouTube optimization early on in this whole thing. And, for a long time, it was clear, like, we don't need, they're not doing anything for us anymore. But it was also a way of like, hey, can you, we got demonetized on this. Can you have somebody talk about that? That was what the relationship was. But the TYT comedy was literally part of their network. Like we never showed up on their homepage. We never showed up in their columns or anything like that. It was just like, it was really, I was their client and they're providing services for us. And one of those services was just like, a distant TYT network, but his show was literally part of
shot in the studio and with TYT
production wise, of course it was all done
lovely too, by the way, just lovely.
But I don't even want to get into that thing. I just want to talk about like the idea that his platform, that these groups should come to him and offer fealty so that they can have access to his platform. And he perceives it that way is an insight that I'd never really had about this guy and why he might resent the fact that so much of his channel, not just from a production standpoint. Yeah, maybe he's a dick with people. I don't even judge people so much that way, at least in terms of their public persona. I wouldn't want to work for him, but whatever. But that could be part of what drives his content is this resent that he knows that half of his subscriptions at least came from basically were handed to him by, Jank and their operation over there. And
Jank
because he was so closely.
Made him. Jank made you, dude. And now you're pretending like you're the kingmaker for AOC.
That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But,
No. You'll never, ever be anywhere close.
But I didn't even want to get into that, but that is
whatever. I mean, there's good people in this industry and there are not good people in this industry. And the origin of whatever this force the vote thing is, it's a bad idea, as we've talked about strategically overall. And also the narcissism of him is embedded in the idea. So like,
yeah, I'm not even talking about
it.
I don't need to talk about that. I don't need to talk about that strategy because it's over. It didn't work. And
it worked for his Patreon, I think. But, so that's all that matters.
All right. Lastly, do we have video of Derek Evans, the West Virginia lawmaker who was arrested at the Capitol? Because apparently there's video. We should probably take a look at that, if we have it. This is an update on Manchin. Spokesperson tells me, this is from Sahil Kapoor from NBC News. Manchin spokesperson tells me he isn't drawing a red line against $2,000 checks. He's open to hearing Biden administration's case for new payments, but believes vaccine distribution should be a higher priority. Oh my God, that is a big back off.
Yeah, well, apparently the market's tanked. I saw Ryan Grimm tweeted that as soon as Manchin said that, there was a huge dip in the markets, and he's like, I'm gonna reach out and make me an offer, and then maybe I'll support the checks.
Here's the initial quote: "Are you on favor of the $2,000 checks?" Absolutely not. No.
2 hours. It's like the SpongeBob meme. 2 hours later, and then everything's crashing. I saw West Virginia is 50th out of 50 states in terms of income, and this is the guy who's saying that you don't need $2,000 checks.
Let's play this clip of Derek Evans, a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates, getting arrested for his actions on Capitol Hill. And I'll tell you something. I'll tell you the political relevance of this, right? Is, again, it's going to be very hard for Joe Manchin to have this subtextual threat of jumping to the Republican Party the more this stuff gets to play. Because like this clip right here, watching this guy go to jail, the net effect of this is it tarnishes the brand of the Republican Party ever so slightly. There's got to be more of this.
I know you got to do your job. That's my grandbaby's in there.
Anything you want to say on his behalf?
He's a fine man. And thank you, Mr. Trump, for inviting a riot at the White House.
And you're his grandmother?
I'm his grandmother.
Whoa.
Wow.
Wow. That's something. That is something. That is not exactly what I expected her to say.
Thank you, Mr. Trump, for inciting a riot.
Yeah, I am. That is not what I anticipated she would be saying.
If he becomes massively unpopular for the rest of his life, it would be very funny. I'm hoping that that sort of attitude takes on.
You think she's being sarcastic, right?
No.
No?
No.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah,
I thought
she was being sarcastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, did you expect somebody to come out of that house and blame Donald Trump for that? I did not.
No, me neither.
Oh, I did not. Not at all. And if that is indicative of the way that a lot of these people are reacting, what that does is it disempowers Josh Hawley. It disempowers Ted Cruz. I mean, it is.
I did not sense the sarcasm there. I'm really sorry.
No, you did. You did sense the sarcasm. She wasn't.
No,
thankful.
I didn't. I thought that
Oh,
she
really?
was being serious at first.
Oh, no. I think she was basically saying, like, this is Donald Trump's fault.
Thanks a lot, asshole.
He's a good man. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I
a-hole.
got that now.
Yep.
Jesus. All right.
Well, folks, that's a good moment to say goodbye to the show. Let me do 5 more IMs and then we'll get out of here. QAnon lifer Erickson, same people downplaying this would have downplayed the beer hall putsch. Patrick from Kansas City, another anecdote. My sister, a nurse, was worried about the vaccine, was thinking of not taking. I heard about this day before she tested positive for COVID, making it 4 for 4, my family.
Wow.
Kevin M. Hey, Sam, today is my birthday. Can I get a shofar? Did I not do this already for him? A lot of people having their birthday today. Elemento, it's going to lead to another something bad, another Patriot Act or worse crackdowns on left-wing protests. Let's hope not. The final IM of this, how many times have I said this over the past 4 years? Insane week. The Congressional Baseball Fan says what happened at the Capitol on Wednesday was the culmination of white, let me speak to the manager culture. These are the same exact type of entitled, self-proclaimed free thinkers. Think they have the right to shop in a grocery store without masks or carry an AR-15 around Target or force a Starbucks employee to write their name on a $6 coffee as Trump. Well said. Emma, Matt, Brendan, Jamie, good job this week. See you guys on Monday.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the